Order. Good evening. I'm Janet Evans, Chair of the CA Board of Directors. Please remember that this meeting of the CA Board of Directors is being live streamed. You can find tonight's agenda and background materials on the CA Board's webpage. Links to these documents can also be found in the description section of our YouTube live stream for those that are watching there. If you are virtual, please mute your microphones and phones unless speaking. Raise your hand to speak, and I will record the names in the order in which I see them. If you are virtual, please use the chat feature. As we move through the meeting, I will introduce each item on the agenda. Before a vote is taken, I will restate a motion as well as who motioned and seconded. If at any point you have trouble hearing me or any other board member, please say so. I will now call roll. Andy?
Present.
Sherry?
Here.
Ginny?
Yes.
Dick?
Here.
Lynn? Lynn may be late tonight. Tina?
Here.
Jess?
Here.
Alan?
Yes.
Renee? Here. Lakey? Here. And me. Thank you. All right, tonight's timekeeper is Jess. So may I have, I have two slight changes on the agenda before we approve it. We took 10 minutes away from things under board discussion and added it to the discussion of the financial reports so that we made sure that we had enough time for questions. So can I have a motion to approve the updated agenda?
So moved. Updated agenda.
Tina, you seconded? All right. Are there any objections? Okay. Okay, so next up is resident Speakout. We have one resident speaking this evening. We have Nina Basu. Welcome, Nina.
Hi, everybody. Nina Basu. I am here on behalf of the Inner Arbor Trust, though in real life I also am a resident from Long Reach. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to say hello again to the CA board. I believe that you all have the Inner Arbor Trust's report about our activities. I wanted to thank CA both on the board and staff for its partnership as we move through our reopening after COVID. I've seen a number of board members at various Inner Arbor Trust events at the Chrysalis and in the western portion of Symphony Woods, so I thank you for your attendance. We are well into our season, and we were able to restart what we think is the most important part of our season, our free-to-attend community program. We started that last weekend with a free-to-attend family concert in our Chrysalis Kids series, made possible by the generosity of our donors and sponsors. So we're really excited. As this board knows, the trust has an obligation under our agreement with CA to provide a substantial number of free programs to the community, or no-charge programs to the community, and we were able to do that again, sort of in that expectation that the community has for high-quality free programs at the Chrysalis. We have our Welcome Back fundraiser, our fundraiser to help continue to support those free programs. On Saturday night, I hope to see as many of you there as possible. And in addition to that, our free community concerts will continue through the end of September. We have the Coast Guard Band, Maryland Winds, we have Opera in the Park, and two other children's performances. So I think we have something for everyone. I also wanted to give a quick update on the capital improvements. You will see that the second pathway is well underway, and we're working through having that pathway in the ground. So we'll have this great connectivity for pedestrians, really making the park usable for all 365 days a year. In addition to that, a very small investment, but a very important one, has been the picnic tables we've placed in the park. Those tables are getting tremendous use, even though there's construction going on site. The actual number of people using Symphony Woods on a regular basis has greatly increased just by giving them some seating. And I would really encourage the CA board member who is able to come visit Symphony Woods and say hello to our partners, Howard Eco Works, that are working on installing conservation landscaping. Howard Eco Works, the trust are working very closely with CA Open Space, who have been fantastic in supporting this project as we install between 10 and 12,000 square feet of conservation landscaping in partnership with EcoWorks, which is a green jobs training program. So if you're going up LPP, you'll see lots of young people in bright shirts saying Howard EcoWorks, working every weekday from 8 to 3. So come and say hello. And we're really seeing some, great progress in improving this asset for the community. So I wanted to say hello, and I'm happy to take any questions anyone might have.
Thank you, Nina. Ginny has a question for you.
Yeah. Actually, I just want to compliment you, your staff, and your board for the number of activities. I don't know how you ever got it together, but it's phenomenal.
We pick a lot of pockets
and a variety
to make it happen.
of activities as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Nina? Thank you, Nina.
Thank you.
Okay, tonight on the consent agenda is the approval of the June 24th and the July 8th meeting. All right, next up, we have board votes. First on that list is the fiscal year 23 budget schedule.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Any discussion on the budget schedule? Are there any objections?
What?
Excellent. So Ginny moved, Andy seconded, and the vote was unanimous. Okay, next item up is the village's financials cap.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion on the village's financial cap? Okay, so we have, hold on, Jess, Andy, Ginny. Okay, go ahead, Jess.
Okay, I'd like to propose an amendment to the report, which is an excellent report, by the way. I just have several of us have a small amendment here. It's on, excuse me, it's recommending deleting number 2 on page 4 of 5. And we sent this around to you, and then I sent around the final change. Andy, Sherry, and I got together this afternoon to work out a better understanding of where we're all coming from, and we agreed to the following. So I'd like to move on page 4 of 5, number 2's replacement. CA will invest any, and you have this in writing, you have the email. CA will invest any excess funds in the village from which it came with a focus on promoting environmental projects, clean and efficient energy, for example, electric vehicle charge stations, energy efficient improvements to buildings, solar panels as some examples, and sustainable landscaping practices, for example, yards alive landscaping, rain gardens, pollinator gardens, conservation plantings, invasive plant removal, and reforestation as some examples, as well as public education and outreach to further advance environmentally sound projects and practices which address climate vulnerability. Is there a second?
Oh, I'll second. I thought Sherry was going to say. I think Sherry actually seconded. I think I saw her.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Her hand go up.
Okay.
I'll let Sherry second.
Is there a?
Okay. So the motion on the table is now with amendment. Next up is Andy, or sorry, Jess, and then Andy.
Yeah, I just had a question about why you decided to make
Excuse me,
that change.
excuse me.
Yeah.
Point of order. It's not the motion with the amendment.
No.
The discussion should be about the amendment.
Sorry.
Right.
Okay, so the discussion is about the amendment?
Right.
Yeah, the
only-
amendment-
Well, that's fine. My question is, why did you add an amendment? And why did you not like the language that was there?
I think this improves it. It adds several areas like outreach, public education, climate, vulnerability. It adds more, it's more expansive than what was there. And also, the problem with what was there is I thought it may be limited to existing projects. It could be misinterpreted. So I think this is, several of us thought this was better, more expansive. So it deletes the language that's currently there and replaces it with more extensive language, expansive.
So I had my original question, which was going to be for the pre-amendment, but it also relates to this, is who is going to be responsible for making these decisions and tracking how this money is spent and making sure that it's used appropriately?
I think that's a question for staff.
Susan?
They're the ones that had this process in place, so I think that's more
It would be
appropriate.
a capital project?
It's a good question, but I think it's more appropriate for staff as to the process.
Are you asking that now?
Yes, I am asking that now. How will we determine how that money will be spent and who will make those decisions and how will the board know what it's been spent on?
I think our original thought when we put this idea forward, again, it's a new one, would be that it would be a combination of working with the village that actually has excess cash in concert with open space and also with finance. And it would be a joint decision to move it forward. I don't think it would be a pure CA decision. I think it would have to be in concert.
Okay. Okay, Andy?
No, I don't have anything really to say on the amendment.
Oh, okay. Alan?
I'll defer until discussion of the whole motion.
Okay.
So can we, Jenny, I like the rewrite that you did or the amendment, but I like the idea of adding to it, and maybe, I don't know if it goes in the amendment or not, that the decision about spending would be in consultation with the village board.
Is it necessary
what she
to
said.
include that? Yeah, I know she
That
said
is
it.
not what I said.
I'm sorry,
I said the
stand
village staff.
corrected. Pardon?
The
I said the
village.
village staff.
The village,
So
the village staff? I stand corrected.
So with village manager?
yes.
Okay. Okay, so are there any objections to the amendment as it stands? All right.
I had one.
Oh, you-
I don't know if it's an objection. I have a comment I would like to say if we're still discussing the amendment.
Okay.
So I do want to be clear that with the expansion, so again, this is only in relation to excess cash, which is very limited in this case, this fiscal year. I think we put forward some very simple ideas. The amendment is pretty expansive, as you just said, and I want to be careful that we're not setting expectations that we can accomplish all those things with whatever that excess cash might be. So I think I just want to be clear that that listing starts to feel comprehensive, and frankly, with some of the outreach and those kind of things, CA would not have any ability to have a control, so to speak, that outreach that someone is specifically a Columbia resident versus, is someone in Howard County. So I think that when we put the idea forward, it was very much around some kind of capital improvement. And the way the amendment reads, it starts to get into outreach and program, which is not necessarily, I'm not saying that's a negative. I think it just is going in a different direction. And we had what we thought was a pretty simple, straightforward, project-based kind of decision. So I do think the more expansive it gets, there is potential for that decision-making process to get more complex, which I don't think is the intention, but it's a concern I wanted to voice.
I agree with
I
that.
actually agree with that too. So maybe we can remove the community outreach portion of that?
Okay, I don't want to
Okay.
talk out of turn, but I have.
Ginny and then Dick?
No, well, no, I'll let somebody else
Okay,
go for a
Dick.
second.
I think it gets a little overly extensive, and I would suggest we just get rid of all the examples and just leave that flexible. I mean, that's something for the village and the staff to work out, and I mean, it's a lot of
Right, and I just want to clarify, this is for 1 year only, correct? So this is so the amounts that we're talking about are fairly limited, and so with that in mind,
Those two villages.
the idea of, okay, so Jess, did you have a comment?
I was just going to say that I think the amendment, while I support the spirit of it, I think it actually becomes more limiting because it does appear more comprehensive, and therefore it is less vague or overarching than the original language. So I just sort of think that it's not necessary and not necessarily helpful, though I like the spirit of it. So that's my thought. I just don't think it's necessary.
Ginny?
Yeah, why are we saying this is for 1 year only? Because only three villages are going to contribute very little money. Why, I thought what would happen would be the other villages would see the potential for this approach, and actually maybe there would be more villages that would have excess money that would work with the village managers, would work with CA staff, and perhaps we'd be able to do more. Because there's very little money
But
this year.
this policy only applies to this year. So if, in fact, we decide to extend it, then we could certainly have a conversation about expanded. Did you finish saying what you needed to say?
Yeah.
Okay. Sherry?
Yeah, I think this year represents an opportunity to simply to make a statement about a commitment to the idea of piloting some of these kinds of projects. I guess my reaction to number 2 initially was that the bioretention ponds, the rain gardens, reforestation, these are all things that CA is already doing. But some of the things that are listed here are things that CA could be doing in the future. And there may be many other ideas out in the community about the types of things that could be done. So these are the kinds of things that have sort of percolated up from the community in the Watershed Advisory Committee, in the climate study and survey information. I think what we're seeing is an opportunity to move in, or to continue the movement, I should say, into the future, because we know we're going to be seeing more issues and more events in this arena. This gives us at least a little seed money, number 1, and number 2, it brings the villages in a way that we're always talking about communication, we're always talking about linkages. This gives us an opportunity to align around some of these issues. So I think making it specific in this way with examples doesn't limit anything. It just suggests some of the things that might move forward in the future.
Okay, let's call it a question on the amendment.
Okay.
I'm going to do a roll call vote.
Okay, as,
The amendment as Ginny read it.
okay, we talked about dropping stuff out of it or changing it.
Well, no one moved that, so that's not what's on the table right now.
I would like to move that we just drop all the examples in the interest of simplicity.
How is that different from the original proposal then?
The original proposal had all the examples in it.
No, it had rain gardens and stormwater
I'd like
projects.
two or three, such as,
How?
I just want to get rid of all the such as.
Do I have a second on that one?
I'll second that.
Man, you guys know how to complicate things. All right, so can you read it out how it would sound, Dick, without those
I
examples?
don't have it.
I have it. CA will invest any excess cash in the village from which it came with a focus on environmental improvement projects, period.
Which is what's in the report, okay.
No, because in the report
Just
it says.
Just deletes the last part.
It deletes in the report says such as
right.
bioretention ponds, rain gardens, and reforestation. This would eliminate that phrase.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's call to question, roll call vote. Andy?
Again, what are we voting on right now?
So, sorry. Okay, so Dick moved and Jess seconded that we will remove all examples from the existing document so that anything after such as is eliminated.
I hate to say it and further complicate your life, but I don't think that's a proper amendment. We're talking about an amendment. We got to
so
first
you have
clear
to
that before we get to this, going back to the original
As I
language.
said, you guys know how to complicate things. All right, so then we're going to call to question on Ginny's amendment, and then we'll have to come back to yours, Dick, okay?
Okay.
All right, call to question on Ginny's. Andy?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
Ginny?
Yes,
Dick?
No.
Is Lynn on yet? No. Tina?
No.
Jess?
No.
Alan?
Abstain.
Abstain. Renee?
Yes.
I'm gonna say no, because I like the simple answer too. Let's say, that's 1, 2, 3, 4 votes in favor, 4 votes against, and 1 abstention. So the amendment failed.
Dick had an amendment now.
Okay, now Dick, you're up.
Okay. And the thing is, I was trying to simplify everything.
Good luck with that.
I'd like to make an amendment that we drop the such as, all the such as, including the last one.
Second.
Jess actually already, oh, no, I guess that doesn't count
Yeah,
anymore,
yeah,
sorry.
you made your motion.
Sorry. All right, discuss.
Do you want me to read it again, or does everyone
I think,
understand?
yeah, it would be good to read it. so-
Okay, so Dick motioned, Tina seconded, and Jess will read what it's going to say.
CA will invest any excess cash in the village from which it came with a focus on environmental improvement projects, period.
Okay. Is there any discussion? All right, let's call to question. Andy?
Yeah.
Sherry?
No.
Ginny?
no,
Dick?
Yes.
Tina?
Yes.
Jess?
Yes.
Alan?
Abstain.
Renee?
No.
And I will vote yes. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in favor, 1, 2, 3 opposed, and 1 abstention. So that amendment passes. Okay, next up is voting on the amended policy. Alan, so Andy and Alan, you both were in the queue for that one. Do you still have comments on that, or?
Yeah. I just want to actually kind of say, yeah, I agree with what Lakey said, that, if you read, this is policy for 1 year, and each village, there are only 3 villages, and they're going to give different amounts of money, and the understanding has to be that for that particular village, it's only that amount of money. So Hickory Ridge has a bunch, and
Yeah.
but King's Contrivance has just a tiny amount. So it's not like everybody can. It's not like a pot
Right.
that people. So just that understanding is there, that it's by village and whatever the village is giving back. And remember that this is excess cash, so it does have to come back the way we normally do it. So just make that clear.
Thank you. Alan?
I'll say we call it excess cash. That's our name for it in order to believe that it's ours to make decisions about. And I totally disagree with that concept. I think the memo is mistaken in spirit, if not in letter, in its first opening lines. Yes, we legally have the right to do it, we have, Columbia has set up, CA has set up, the villages have set up over time a system where this is the fact. But it's paternalistic, it's any other adjective one could think of, I'll just leave it at paternalistic, to believe that it's our money. The villages have the right to create assessments. They could have done that. It was decided early on that for simplicity's sake, they wouldn't. It would all be funneled through CA. So in spirit, if not in legal letter, it's a pass-through. Therefore, while I absolutely applaud the creative thinking that went into this proposal, I absolutely applaud the purposes around ecological efforts. The reason why I abstained is that I don't think that this is an appropriate thing to do, no matter what its form was. So I didn't want to vote in favor or against any particular way of doing it. I think that ecological projects, if we want to do them, we should do them. I think that it's the amount of money we're talking about is so small that it's not going to have much of an impact. I think ecological projects take more money and often more time, and ecological projects often affect more than just a single village. So to say the money goes back to a village, we ought to be thinking bigger. We ought to be thinking broader. And while I get the point that it keeps the money, quote unquote, in the village, it may be such a nominal amount of money that there's not really much use for it when that money, if we're going to keep it, if we're going to stay paternalistic and keep it and put it in CA's budget, we could be pooling it together and doing something more significant than just nominal projects that, de minimis projects that have less
Got about
impact
10 seconds left.
for Columbia than we would if we did it overall. So I'm going to vote against this policy for those reasons.
That's time.
That's time. Sherry, and then we're calling to question.
Yeah, I just want to correct the idea that ecological and environmental projects always have to be huge. What we're seeing right now is we're seeing a lot of interest among homeowners in doing projects on their properties. We're seeing villages that are creating CARES types of programs that Kingston Drive-Ins just voted on one. Our board was behind it. Owen Brown just voted for one. These are smaller kinds of projects that are oriented towards an educational function where homeowners are sharing examples with one another about doing rain gardens, about doing different kinds of things. Not everything has to be huge. I'm certainly supportive, I think everybody knows, of the watershed projects that we have done, and the big projects certainly are costly, but we don't need to put blinders on and say that we can only pool money towards big projects. I think supporting our residents and our homeowners in thinking about individual ways that they can lower their carbon footprint and support the environment, particularly these days, is really important. That's just my statement.
Okay, so the motion on the table is the one that Ginny moved and Andy seconded, and it is the amended one that Dick's amendment is applied to. So I'll take a roll call vote. Andy?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
Ginny?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes.
Tina?
Yes.
Jess?
Yes.
Alan?
No.
Renee?
No.
And me, yes. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 yeses, 2 nos. Motion passes. Okay, next up, we have the President and CEO fiscal year 22 goals and objectives. Can I have a motion to approve?
I move we approve the goals and objectives.
Thank you.
Second.
Ginny seconds. All right, any discussion?
Just a quick question. This is the one that we approved in our last meeting.
This
without-
is the goals and objectives piece
Just the
of it.
goals and
Yes.
objectives.
So we have not voted on this piece
Okay,
yet,
this is
but
not
it's the one we saw in the
evaluation
last
piece. Okay,
meeting.
all right, thank you.
Andy? And then Jess?
I just, go ahead, Andy.
No, I mean, this is the goals and objectives, but not the evaluation.
Correct.
This was what Lakey put together.
No, this is what we put together, but the piece that we discussed in the open meeting last time.
Oh, all right.
Right.
I
So the
do-
rating scale
Okay,
and the goals themselves,
It's what's,
which have been updated. We combined ethics and leadership, correct?
so I do have a proposed amendment to change that one bullet on the financial leadership stewardship of resources, which, I sent out
Yes.
to the board. I thought the document was good. It's just, I just think that one comment needs a little bit, and I'm.
Yeah, do you have that handy? Could you?
Yes.
Please point us to a page or a item.
Yeah, so it's on the financial leadership stewardship resources, bullet number 4. Right now, it says ensures an annual audit of financial operations with a careful and thorough review by the board. I am suggesting that we replace that with ensures that an external independent audit of the previous fiscal year's financial operation is completed and presented to the board.
Second.
Okay, Andy moves. Renee seconds. Any discussion on the amendment? Okay, any objections to the amendment?
no.
Okay, unanimous. Okay, any other, yes, Jess?
So my question was, is the version that we are voting on right now, does that include Tina's suggestions for DEI?
Does not. No.
Okay, so then I would like.
Need to?
Pardon?
Does it need to?
If you want them to be
'Cause this was-
included, then you need to
Well, no,
amend.
Are these separate things? And I wasn't sure if this was the open meeting or the closed meeting, and which one could we do the what? So I should be asking that. Thank you.
So we are talking about goals and objectives. This is part of the open meeting. And if you have things that you would like to alter when it comes to the president and CEO's goals, then now is the time to make that amendment.
So the way I understood the email that you sent, Tina, is that those were things that you wanted to change to this document, right? So should we,
Yes,
okay.
please.
So you need to make that amendment.
Okay, so I would like
To move.
that amendment, please. The email that I sent earlier with suggestions for,
Actually, I think we're going to have to do each one individually because I think.
I can pull it up. I have my.
yeah, I was gonna say, I have it too.
I have it all up
Let me
on my
look at my
phone.
sent items.
Oh, look at Andy.
He's got it printed.
He is
Got it all.
Ew.
He knows how this is supposed to work.
I know. He's like, I've killed all the trees.
And we're happy about it.
And we're so grateful. Okay, so would it be helpful for me to read them out?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, let's start with the
One at a
first
time?
one. Yes,
Yeah.
let's, because I think we're going to have to.
So this is a printout of your email, Tina.
Thank you.
So it says under stewardship of resources. And then under presents budget discussions. Hang on. Okay, so at the end of that sentence, it would say, including any ramifications for diversity, equity, and inclusion. After scenarios, provide scenarios, comma, including any ramifications for diversity, equity, and inclusion,
Where?
comma, to facilitate understanding during decision-making.
I'm sorry, I'm not clear where that goes.
Under financial leadership
Yeah.
/ stewardship of resources,
Yeah, I know
1,
that, but,
2, 3, 4, bullet 5, where it says presents
Presents budget
budget discussions.
so how would it read?
Presents budget discussions to communicate trade-offs and provide scenarios, comma, including any ramifications for diversity, equity, and inclusion, comma, to facilitate understanding during decision-making.
I'll
Can I
second that.
Could I get clarification on what ramifications means?
Yeah.
What does the word ramifications mean? Any
I'm pretty
possible-
clear on what ramifications, but I mean specifically, what kind of ramifications would you expect to be seen? This is a goal, so it needs to be very specific
Right,
and
so
measurable.
I would be looking for any type of budgeting decision that may be impacting the diversity or equity and inclusion that we're trying to seek, and that we want to have our employees seek in the work day to day. A budget is a moral document, and DEI work is something that we had said during our retreat would be woven in throughout all of our goals and for this year. And so this is one of the places where it would certainly show up and need to be considered.
Okay, any discussion on this topic?
I
Yeah,
seconded it.
Yeah, I got your second, Alan. Thank you, Dick.
I'm certainly sympathetic with what Tina's suggesting here, but I think we're getting into a bit of overkill. If you go to the ethics, leadership, and culture section, we have a piece in here, sets the tone for diversity, equity, and inclusion within CA and within the community. And that, to me, is pretty all-inclusive. To put verbiage in every single one of these things, it just unnecessarily complicates things. So I am going to suggest that we not put any of these amendments in.
Thank you. Alan?
Dick, I take your point, and when we're talking how to enact real values around diversity, equity, and inclusion, what we find is that having an overall statement is a nice goal, but it makes it hard to evaluate. And specifically, or I haven't thought about each one of them, but certainly this one around the impact of our money and how we spend it, to me makes a lot of sense to take this into account. That's why I seconded the motion.
Do we have a sense of how we would measure this? So for instance, we don't have policies dictating what we would normally include or not include. So I'm just trying to figure out how, when we are discussing, so I mean, considering, so as long, I just want to make sure that like,
Do we have other policies about desired direction and trust and collaboration and positive working relationships?
I don't think you were next in the queue, Alan, but
Sorry, trying to answer your question.
I'm just trying to make sure that we understand. So this is considers evolving internal and external trends and factors, including
The dog.
ramifications for diversity, equity,
that
and
as a no.
inclusion. So yeah, I think the dog disagrees.
I think the dog agrees.
So I just want to make sure, like, when we're talking about considering, we're just making sure that it is part of the decision-making process. Is that what you would look for evidence of this one?
That's what I'm looking for. I mean, even that will be a positive step forward.
Okay. Any additional discussion on this one?
I have a point of information.
Yes.
Could you read that aloud one more time?
Sure. Okay. Presents budget communications to communicate trade-offs in, no?
Discussions,
Present budget discussions. That one.
communicate
To communicate.
trade-offs.
Yeah, isn't that what I just said?
Presents budget discussions to
speaking
communicate trade-offs and provides scenarios,
world.
including any ramifications.
Under presents, okay.
I'm
I'm
reading
reading
it.
the whole phrase.
I'm reading it. I was just reading it, but feel free, go ahead.
No, that's fine, go ahead.
Presents budget discussions to communicate trade-offs and provide scenarios, including any ramifications for diversity, equity, and inclusion to facilitate understanding during decision-making. Ginny?
I understand what you're trying to do, Tina, but I guess I'm still trying to understand how you measure it so that you can rate a person, or how Lakey and her staff are going to measure it.
Renee?
Other than
sorry.
under what Dick's saying, under, ethics and that to be evaluated there, and community engagement.
I'm just waiting for it to finish.
Yeah, Renee.
Okay, so I agree that I like goals and objectives that are quantifiable and measurable. What I'm going to say is if I could just hop up a couple of these where I see sets the tone for financial discipline, that's not a measurable goal. There's
That's
no
10 minutes on
measurement
this,
in
just so
there.
you know.
Thank you.
So I think if you don't want to vote for what Tina and Jess are proposing, that's fine, but I don't think the excuse is it's not measurable. Because most of these aren't measurable. You don't have a measurement in there.
All right, let's call to question on this one.
Jess had her hand up.
Oh, Jess.
I just wanted to clarify, I thought that when we had our retreat, we discussed the idea of creating a document that, or some sort of way that we would evaluate budget initiatives against our values. And the idea was to include, as I understood it, DEI as part of that. So to me, that would sort of be the mechanism, right? If that tool is being used once it's developed, and that tool includes that, then that would be a measurable way to track that.
So my only concern here is that there's no baseline currently. We have nothing in place now.
Well, maybe that is the baseline. We have-
Okay, well, and the thing is
And then
as
we
long
build.
as we recognize that as the starting point, then, because this is what I'm looking at, like, so under financial leadership, there are 6 sub-goal, 6 goals under that piece. And so what I would hate to see happen is if somebody feels like they did not see their diversity, equity, and inclusion front and center, that they give low marks across the board. That's one piece of 6 goals, and we're starting from 0. So I'm just trying to make sure that we're laying the expectations that, any progress is progress. So I agree with that. I'm concerned that we're creating a standard that's not achievable in 10 months in the first year of somebody's tenure. So that's where my concern comes in. Ginny?
Yeah, and I think some of this is covered in the second bullet there, mission and vision.
Does our mission include diversity?
Yeah, it does actually. Diverse community, what's that one? Our vision creates, supports solutions to meet the evolving needs of a dynamic and inclusive community. So I think inclusive covers that.
But nothing about equity. Maybe we just include equity.
Well, it's,
All right, let's call this one to question. I'll do a roll call vote. All right, Andy,
No.
Sherry,
Yes.
Ginny,
no.
Dick,
No.
is Lynn on yet? Tina,
Yes.
Jess,
Yes.
Alan,
Yes.
Renee?
Yes.
It actually doesn't matter how I vote, so I'm voting no. I was torn on that one because I also agree with what you're trying to achieve. I'm not sure about the execution of it. So that motion passes.
Yeah, there's 4 additional changes. So I would like to move that under strategic development, where is it? It's a new bullet point that says, create, maintain, and measure an inclusive culture through communication, hiring practices, procurement practices, and data reporting.
Second.
Okay, let's keep the discussion focused on this one.
I would call a question.
All right.
I'm in the queue.
You're, sorry, Alan, I have the document up, so if you could, yeah, go ahead, Alan.
I believe that this one is covered in the strategic plan, which has diversity, I forget all the language, but it has this in it. And so I'm not sure I don't believe we need to add an extra bullet here.
Anything else? All right, I'll do roll call vote. Andy?
I'll agree with Alan, it's in the strategic plan. I vote no.
Okay. Sherry?
Same reason, I vote no.
Ginny?
No.
Dick?
No.
Tina?
Yes.
Jess?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes, and in the future, I know it's harder on you, but could you mix up the order of the vote so people don't always vote early or last?
I will do my best, Alan.
Thanks.
If you'd like to provide an order each time, I'd be happy to take it. Renee?
Yes.
So this considers evolving, that one. I just want to make sure I'm.
No, this is create, maintain, and measure an inclusive culture.
No, I'm going to say no on that one. Okay, so motion fails 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 4. Didn't we miss one?
There's two more.
There's 2 more. No, 3 more.
3 more, I beg your pardon. Although I may withdraw the last one.
Okay.
Okay, next up.
So it's also under strategic development. I move that in the last bullet point to add at the end,
After
sorry,
factors.
or in the middle. I just want to make sure I'm structuring the sentence correctly.
Oh,
To after factors. Okay. Considers evolving internal and external trends and factors, comma, and then add including ramifications for diversity, equity, and inclusion, comma, and adjusts and plans as necessary.
okay. Do I?
Second.
Okay. All right, roll call vote. Janet, yes. Renee?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Jess?
Yes.
Tina?
Yes.
Dick?
No.
Ginny?
Yeah.
Sherry?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
All right, so that one, 1, 2, 3, oh, sorry, that one was moved by Jess, seconded by Renee. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 4, and 1 against. That one passes. Okay, next one.
Okay, I would move that we amend under the ethics, leadership, and culture section as a separate bullet point. Establish and clearly communicate specific, measurable, and time-bound goals with regards to diversity, equity, and inclusion.
So can I clarify here that this is establishing the goals? This is not expecting to accomplish them in this year? Okay.
Establish the goals.
Second.
Establish and communicate, yep.
Yeah, second.
Okay, Jess moved, Renee seconded.
I call the question.
All right.
We don't, any discussion?
Yeah, go ahead, let him talk.
I'm in the queue.
Okay, go ahead, Alan.
I need to understand how this is substantially different from, sets the tone for diversity, equity, and inclusion within CA and within the community.
Goals and tone are not
It's certainly more specific, but it just seems overkill to have a second one.
Tina.
Goals and tone are not the same thing. Tone is this nebulous, could be anything. Goals are actual things that we can put our hands on and actually measure. How are we going to measure tone? I don't think that we will. We'll all know it when we see it. Goals, we can put our hands on.
Well, then maybe we can combine them, sets the tone and establishes goals for diversity, equity, and inclusion within CA and within the community. Separate one just feels like overkill to me at this point. Thanks.
I'm willing to combine them. I think the tangibility of goals is important.
So is it adequate from your perspective to say sets the tone and establishes goals for diversity, equity, and inclusion within CA and the community?
Yes.
Okay.
Is that a friendly amendment? Is that the parliamentary procedure?
That is the parliamentary
I accept
procedure.
the friendly
right.
amendment,
Except that she made the motion.
except that I can't accept.
Oh, Jess, do you accept?
I'm all excited.
Okay.
So will you accept that?
So the way I'm understanding this, this is the way I understand this, before I say, yes, I accept this amendment. I would see this as sets the tone for sets the tone and establishes and clearly communicates specific measurable and time-bound goals for diversity, equity, and inclusion within CA and within the community.
Well, I like that.
I really like that.
I do too.
I second whatever that is.
Okay, so what you said was sets the tone and establishes
Yeah, I just took that first
specific,
part.
measurable, and time-bound goals.
Correct.
Okay.
Establishes, because you got to change the tense, because grammar, and clearly communicates specific, measurable, and time-bound goals for diversity, equity, and inclusion within CA and within the community.
And just verifying again, time-bound does not mean in the next 10 months.
No.
Yeah, make sure it's out.
time-bound,
No,
some
you're
sort of time-bound.
And I think you're right to clarify.
Well, we better get that straight.
I heard two
'cause I
different
two
answers,
different
Janet.
things.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, sets the tone and establishes and clearly communicates specific, measurable, and time-bound goals with regard to diversity, equity, and inclusion within CA and within the community.
Janet?
Ginny?
Yeah, this is for the evaluation that'll be done in April, a final, but before that in November. So it is this evaluation, therefore it is time-bound, very time-bound.
No, the
No,
evaluation is time-bound. The goals do not have to be.
Yeah, it could be a 3-year goal, a 5-year goal.
What Jess said.
Okay, I was just trying to figure out how we're going to measure.
Well, if she set the goals and they're
Or she's-
time-bound,
Or she started drafting goals, or she's assembled a team to begin building goals.
Okay, can we call it a question? Because this is dragging on and on.
Could I ask a question of clarification before we do,
Yes.
though? I'm a little concerned with within the community. I'm not sure the CA has the power to create goals within the community. I just want to make sure we're clear that they may be sort of on behalf of the community or for the community, but we can't set goals for other people.
Well, then that would separate out those 2 bullet points because you could set a tone in the community, but you can't set goals.
Yeah,
That's a good point. I'll let it stand. I just want to make sure I made that point. Thanks.
I didn't hear what Alan said, I'm sorry.
I didn't hear what, Alan, what did you?
I get your point. I just want to make that point, and I'm accepting it the way it is.
Okay. Go.
well, I'm still not clear. Is for the community, within the community, what did we, what?
Within the community, that's what it already says. That's part, within the community was there. This is adding
They
to.
would set the
But quite
goals.
honestly, I think it's clearer having it as a separate bullet point, to be honest.
yeah, someone wanted to combine it so that there wouldn't be a separate bullet point. I don't even remember who made that.
Well, Alan did, but the
That
thing
was me.
is, setting, I mean, to Tina's point, setting the tone and creating a goal are not the same thing.
Correct.
So you could set tone within the community, but you may not be able to set goals within the community. You can really only control what's happening at CA.
Right, that's why I was getting unclear.
So I suggest, I would like to propose then you revert to the original.
Okay, so how
Second.
about this? I don't accept the amendment.
That works.
Which-
Okay, so then the motion is.
To add the
which-
bullet
Yes,
point.
Jess motioned, Renee seconded that we add a bullet point that says, establish and clearly communicate specific, measurable, and time-bound goals with regards to diversity, equity, and inclusion. All right, call to question. Tina,
Yes.
Jess,
Yes.
Alan,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
Janet, yes. Andy,
Yes.
Sherry,
Yes.
Ginny,
Yeah,
Dick.
No.
Okay,
How do you feel about the last one, Tina?
can we get rid of that one since we already have a committee?
Yeah,
We're good.
Okay,
thank you.
okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you for writing those, Tina.
I had a good team.
Okay, so now we will vote on the amended President and CEO evaluation.
I move approval. Is it too late? We already have approval. We already have it.
Yeah, we have it from way back.
I'm all excited. I'm sorry.
All right, so Ginny moved, Andy seconded,
As amended.
as amended, well,
Move as amended.
it doesn't, yes.
Move as amended, yeah.
Move as amended.
We don't have to move again as amended.
No,
Okay,
The amendments were
let's just
accepted,
take
yeah.
a vote, please. Andy,
Yes.
Sherry,
Yes.
Ginny,
Yes.
Dick,
Yeah.
Tina,
Yes.
Jess,
Yes.
Alan,
Yes.
Renee,
yes.
and me, yes. So, motion passes unanimous. All right. All right, so next up, we have, under board discussion, the dashboard.
Point of information.
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify that this is where we had amended the time. I don't know if
Correct.
the timekeeper is aware.
I have here 25 minutes for the dashboard. Is
Excellent.
that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Leaky.
The clock is ticking.
So this is the dashboard for the fourth quarter of FY '21. So these metrics were selected and approved by the board based on staff recommendation and joint work several years ago. So these are, should be familiar to most board members. We didn't present a lot of them every quarter last year through the pandemic because of the impact on the measures, but we did do it for year end. Andy had noted that the memo that was originally posted had a mistake in the ordering. That is corrected in the package. So the cover memo does align with the dashboard metrics. And so the first relate to membership accounts and just the AR balance, the accounts receivable balance, and the write-offs, the age of those receivables. The second is related to personnel productivity, looking at the cost, personnel cost divided by the non-annual charge revenue. So how our workforce is, the spending on the workforce is related to the dollars generated from that. The second, next is cash flow, looking at how the organization is cash flowing and then from operations. And then metrics 4 and 5 are from our debt covenants. So those are related to their requirements from financing. Oh, Karen's going to come and. Try now. So that's 4 and 5. And item 6 is related to, and 6A, 6B, CA has a lot of facilities, and so these metrics are to measure aspects of our investment in those facilities and the costs of those. I'm causing technical problems. So I think I'm
You have a
way
bad
too loud.
electromagnetic field going on there.
Yes.
Either that or we need a new battery.
So did you shake your fist at it?
I
Was
need
that
to press
often?
the correct button.
Oh.
Thanks. Try not to forget that next time.
I hate technology.
And then the communications and marketing produces some data and metrics related to advertising effectiveness in membership market share. And finally, we have our Clarabridge reports that are based on surveys of members that Dan will talk about. Any questions about any of these before I would hand it over to Dan? So Dan, anything that you would like to highlight in the Clarabridge?
Good evening. It's been a minute since I've got a chance to talk to y'all. Yeah, the survey, and it's actually interesting considering it goes back to April, which now this is more of a time capsule than a survey, more than normal. But the survey was one of the surveys we've ever had overall in terms of net promoter score and responses, not volume, but the positivity of the responses from the members. 40.9 for our net promoter was one of our highest scores, and that's even factoring in the -4 we got from Haven, considering that's when we were closing it. But overall, it was very, very strong. I do want to point out and call out, and I made a note of this in there, the tremendous work Tavia and the team has done at Supreme Sports Club over the last 5 years that she's been here. When she came, the net promoter score for Supreme 17. This past survey, she was at 48.7 and the highest of the 3 fitness centers. She has done a wonderful job in really engaging that membership base and having them be excited and connected to the facility. As I said, it's a little bit of a time capsule because this is where the first survey where we started to see a shift in the attitudes of our COVID management policy. Pretty much, people were starting to be over it. They were appreciative of everything we've done, but they were getting to be over it. And you can start seeing that bubbling up in the messaging. But that did not affect the net promoter overall. But overall, it was very positive considering where we were at the time. Very positive in general, but really positive considering where we were at. Any questions?
Thank you, Dan. I've never seen so much green on the infographic before, so.
Thank you.
Any questions? Not hearing any. Anything else you want to highlight, Dan? I know it's sort of a weird comparison. I think it looks good. All right. Thanks, everyone. Oh, yeah, so sorry, Renee and then Tina.
Yeah, so I just need to understand, I mean, I'm not sure which metric we want to look at first. I'm not sure that the metrics are comparable. I mean, last year we had no pools open. So
Wait a second,
I cannot
Am I missing
hear
that?
anything.
There's something on the screen. It says we're muted, so
Oh.
just a moment.
I'm sorry.
I can't hear anything. Is anyone else?
One moment.
So IT, the people online can't hear us.
Then probably.
It's your microphone, Susan.
I'm
Now they
sure.
can only hear you.
Your fault, Susan.
All it reminds me of is
Wait, here comes,
They said the whole boardroom is muted.
for those of you that go way back,
that was me.
Not it.
think of Dawn Small, Smart.
Can you hear us
Okay, can you
now?
guys hear us now?
We've got you.
Excellent. All right. Sherry, if you could put your name in the chat, it would be really helpful because the hands don't register all the time for me.
Okay, I did already, but apparently it didn't go through or
Oh, no, I see it. but
whatever that glitch was.
I didn't see your name there because you said I can't hear anything. All right. Renee, did you have a question?
I had something there
Then
before. but
Tina and then
okay, fine.
Sherry.
I have a question-
Tina's first, Sherry, and then you.
I have a question about the membership market share graphic on the bottom of page 26. I just want to make sure that I'm reading it right. From fiscal Q1 to Q4, the market share has gone down from 27.5% to under 20%. Am I reading that right?
Where are you, what line are you on?
I'm at the bottom of page 26,
Maybe I'm the wrong 26.
and I'm reading
Oh, I had
market
the wrong-
share
I got it.
excluding Columbia cards. I should make this bigger so I can see it.
That is true, yes.
So membership has gone down.
Right, through the COVID period.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Sherry?
Yeah, I'd also like to ask a question about membership. What are CA's goals for market share in the next year?
It's a good question.
We would love to regain 50% of what we've lost, so.
Which would take us to?
I'd have to, I don't have that handy, I'm sorry.
Renee?
Okay, so that's actually a great question. So if we get to 50% of what we lost, what's our profitability on sports and fitness?
So our profitability on, well, first of all, as you know, the board's direction has never been for sport and fitness to be profitable. So the profitability for in FY21 was excellent on the compared to FY20. It was within 6% of the previous year, which only had a 6-week closure. So our goal would be to continue to improve that, and to the team is working to restore the membership revenue to what it was. And so the budget is what our goal is for profitability in FY22.
Okay.
Any other questions on the dashboard? Andy?
I just wanted to make sure people understood that the metric you're seeing here is membership market share for Columbia. It does not include all of our memberships.
Right.
Because there's a component of memberships
Right.
that don't live in Columbia,
That's right.
you know, which also helps contribute to the bottom line.
Right.
So
Right.
I just want to make sure people understand that the bottom line is partially affected by this, but it also has another component that is significant for non-CA residents.
Right, so our residents are paying
Alan-
for people outside
Alan's in the queue.
Columbia. I'm not in the queue.
Do you want to be in the queue?
No,
Okay. Alan?
I need to learn to shut up.
I'd like to hear from staff about this whole report, the 2 or 3 things you're pleased with and the 2 or 3 things that concern you.
Related to the dashboard,
Related to the financials, whatever you want to talk about, but we can contain it to the dashboard at this point.
so I'm pleased that we met our and exceeded our targets for our debt covenants. I think that's critical, and that we continue to that we had positive cash flow, and that the membership sentiment was so strong. And I would ask Dan if he had anything to add to that.
No, I agree. I mean, financially coming out of the pandemic and talking to other organizations around the country, I think we're in a really,
Dan, it's a little bit hard to hear you.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can get closer to your mic.
I agree with Susan. I think in talking to other organizations, we've come out of COVID in a really strong position and are rebounding well, obviously not as fast as anybody wants anywhere, but in terms of regaining members and the enthusiasm for the members returning and the financial positions, very encouraging, especially given the circumstances at this time.
And the 2 or 3 things that cause you some concern?
I mean, from my perspective, it is obviously the thing that it's the membership. We were substantially challenged, like every organization was with their membership, and we can't get it back fast enough. Although this summer has been pretty spectacular, but re-engaging our membership base and getting them to return is extremely important. And a huge consideration.
Thank you.
Okay, Tina's up and then Ginny.
I think Jenny had her hand up before me, but you just happened to, I caught your eye first.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to ask, as part of our membership data, do we capture any other demographic information about our membership, such as age, race, gender, shoe size. I mean, I don't know what all of the demographic characteristics that we might capture would be, but I'm wondering if it's possible to get a list of those.
Okay. We capture age and gender when a member joins.
Thank you.
Ginny?
Yeah. Thanks, Dan. I know membership is a key issue, but what about staffing? Are you having any problems getting staff and retaining staff?
Within sport and fitness, it's a little bit mixed.
Can you speak up, please, Dan?
I'm sorry. Within sport and fitness, it's a little bit mixed. The aquatics is definitely challenging. The seasonal employees are where we're being hit the hardest, both in aquatics and in golf, all the seasonal help. Within the other divisions, some specialty employees like personal trainers, where we need a specialty certification, are a little bit challenging. As far as the general staff, the frontline staff, it's a little tight, but we're not in any kind of significant situation where we don't have staff.
Okay, thank you.
Susan?
I would add that it's my understanding that the school age services team is struggling with their hiring. That's not unusual, and it's often a push at the finish, so to speak. But I understand that that's more difficult this year. And then Dennis, I don't know, your team trades has been a challenge.
We're down a couple of people, and we've had trouble hiring. So definitely there is some problems.
I would say across the organization, it's been hit hardest. I was having this conversation recently in our hourly positions, and that is happening across many different sectors right now. So I think it has a lot to do with pay rate. I mean, we have a competitive pay rate, but I think for our jobs, and we do keep an eye on that, but the kind of competitiveness that's occurring in the market with signing bonuses and additional pay is very representative of many industries having that challenge. But I think we're feeling it across all teams right now.
Alan?
Yeah, I just want to make sure, I wasn't sure if I may have been typing when you answered the question. Have we had to curtail hours at the pools or not open a pool that we wanted to open because of problems getting lifeguards or other staff?
We have not had to curtail hours at any of our locations.
Okay, thank you.
Tina?
Does that mean Dasher Green is opening soon?
Do we want to address that now? I was going to address it during questions.
I'm good either way.
Okay. So we wanted to go ahead and address, I assumed I would get that question tonight. I've received it from a few of you individually already. We were able to open Faulkner Ridge, and at the time that we announced our hope to be able to open two based on what our budget allowed, but knowing that staffing really, we couldn't gauge the ability to hire staff until we actually posted openings. So we have come to the conclusion, given the timing, that we do not have enough of the summer left to post, train, hire, train, and then open the pool. We are going off what we learned on Faulkner Ridge, which is we were able to hire staff. We received not one new management application. We offered signing bonuses, and we still had to leverage our existing staff from other pools to get the pool opened and covered. So while we are safely operating, to be clear, we are absolutely stretching our staff to be able to do that. So given the timing of the remainder of the summer, we have gotten to the point and are announcing that we will not be able to open Dasher Green. And again, when we made the announcement, it was, of course, pending staff, but that is definitely where we have arrived. So I'm happy to answer any questions, or Dan can provide more context, but I did want to be clear that we have been watching that, discussing it internally the entire time, but the number of applications we received, we were stretching to open one.
Thank you. Jenny?
Yeah, considering some of the lifeguards and managers will be going back to college maybe early, are we going to wind up having to consider closing some pools earlier? Or Alan's question, curtailing hours, et cetera, in like the last week in August? Or are there any plans for looking at that?
Dan, you can speak to that. I believe that we feel we're going to be pretty similar to our normal wind down. It might be different pools, but Dan, do you want to address that?
Yeah, the schedules already indicate that some of the pools will start closing mid-August because of staffing considerations. That's normal every summer. And it's even worse this summer. Usually it's just freshmen rushing back to college or going to college. But now the sophomores never really had a freshman year, so they're rushing to go back as well. So there will be a few pools closing, and I don't know them off the top of my head, mid-August as we head towards the end of summer.
And before we get the question, we are intending to keep Faulkner Ridge open because it just opened. So just before it's asked.
So I have Tina, then Alan, then Dick.
Thank you.
Was that your question?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Alan?
Crystal ball.
What had Faulkner Ridge open before Dasher Green? Why wasn't staff, I'm not saying it should have been, but I'm just curious, why was it allocated there and not to Dasher Green?
It was based on multiple factors that we presented at the time when we put the two forward, and we went with Faulkner Ridge. If you need more information than that, then I certainly can go back to our detailed analysis, but that was conducted.
Okay, thank you.
Dick?
Speaking of swimming pools, I saw something about a leak at Faulkner Ridge. You know anything about that?
I've not been involved in that, no.
You will be.
I can find out.
No, there's nothing to worry about.
Nothing to worry about.
It's not an issue.
No. Well, somebody was also complaining about the water being too cold.
No, it warmed up. We got that
warmed
covered.
up.
Okay, yeah, let's not
Okay.
rehash
There's
that.
no
Thank you.
Faulkner
Moving
pool.
on. Any other questions about the dashboard? All right, thank you, Dan. Thank you, Susan. All right, next topic are board priorities. So for our July action items that we as a board had, the first one was the Newtown positioning paper, which we completed earlier this month. The next one was approving the president and CEO goals, as well as the format and calculation methodology. So that, as of submitting these materials, was on track, but now, as of tonight, is complete. So next up was confirming the committee for Symphony Woods. I did send out an email earlier this week outlining the committee members. So we did not, I didn't bring up subcommittee guidelines for a vote. Obviously, everyone provided their feedback. I incorporated it. So that's available for everyone to review. But is there any conversation that you would like to have around the Symphony Woods subcommittee? I think it was pretty clear from our board priorities notes what that subcommittee intended to complete. So, but I'm happy to entertain any discussion at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dick?
Yeah, I was a little confused. Obviously, the Symphony of Lights thing is not something that's on the agenda of that. But you mentioned easements. Were we talking about those little mini easements between various groups? Or were we talking about?
No, we're talking about the
access easements?
We're talking about all of the easements at Inner Arbor Trust that we are currently discussing separately from that. So it would be the phases for the Inner Arbor Trust.
Are we talking about the big easement, the big Inner Arbor CA
Yes.
easement.
Well, you're not on the subcommittee, but that's what I mean by that is not included.
Well, that surprises me, because that was basically what we were trying to resolve, is how we go about negotiating that easement.
Those negotiations are underway, so I'm not sure what the subcommittee, well, Inner Arbor Trust submitted, and CA, it's in CA's court at this point, but we currently don't have a general counsel.
And I want to be careful here, because obviously we're talking legal issues, but, so this would go to, we would take what Inner Arbor had, and then general counsel would?
So this is my take on it, and I'm happy to get any input on this, but the subcommittee does not have the expertise to be able to evaluate and adjust easements. And so what I thought the subcommittee intended to do was to discuss what the board would like to think about when these easements are being discussed.
All right, then.
Okay, so yeah.
One of the things in some of the paperwork that's been written so far was a set of what the board's objectives would be in terms of
Yeah.
when a legal
Okay.
agreement.
So I
Okay,
think we're on the
that
same
is
page.
the-
Okay.
That is.
Yeah, so when I say not the easements, what I'm saying is, don't say, we should do this with the easement, we should do this with the easement. That, I think what the subcommittee needs to think about is what matters to the board. So is it the land? Is it the access? Is it the development happening on the land? Is it the, there were a number of, the maintenance of the land, there were a number of things that had been identified in the notes from that.
Because
Yeah.
there were discussions with, when Milton had hired a lawyer to come in and talk with us.
Well, it actually doesn't, if I'm answering, sorry.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get some clarification here,
Yeah.
because we don't want to go off and spin our wheels.
Well, absolutely, and that's why I brought it
Yeah.
up.
My understanding was that, Milton went out and hired a lawyer, and she came back and gave us, I don't know,
That's-
thousands of dollars
Dick,
worth of advice.
stop,
we didn't ask for.
stop,
Yeah, this
But
is,
anyway.
stop.
no, it's confidential.
That was not an open meeting.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
But what the concern was is that nobody had told the lawyer what we were looking for.
And that's water under the bridge now, that's irrelevant, because we're on a new page.
Okay.
Ginny and then Renee.
Well, no, just, we got your email, and the committee will be meeting on the 29th at 1:30, so.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, that's it.
That was what you were going to say too? All right.
I'm in the queue.
Alan?
Yeah, well, I get that a committee doesn't have the expertise to formulate easement language and all that. I think issues that pertain to the easement are certainly on the table, as well as general parameters of an easement. For example, the current easement is a perpetual easement. Is that what the board wants? A perpetual easement or a more time-limited easement, or other parameters that would impact the terms of the easement and so on. So I get that I don't want them writing language for an easement, but I would want them to be thinking about the easement as a vehicle. So I don't support something that says no conversation about easement.
When I said they would not be deciding the easements, my intent was not that they would not enter into the conversation.
Can I,
Okay, as long as that's clear, thank you.
Renee?
okay, yeah, I just think that this is a conversation that needs to happen behind closed doors.
I agree with that.
Okay.
Okay, so the subcommittee is meeting on
July
29th at 1:30. And I don't think there's anything else left to say.
Is a subcommittee meeting in closed session, if you will?
Well, it can't be more than 5 members total, or it's a quorum and it has to be open.
Well, but are they going to take measures to ensure that they're in closed? I mean, if I just heard
It doesn't
the
have to,
assertion that this is closed meeting stuff.
it doesn't have to be closed if there's not quorum. It's not a meeting.
It's
if
not an
it's
open
not
meeting, if
quorum.
it's not a
It's not a
quorum.
meeting, period.
Right.
Closed or open.
My point is not about number, it's about the content. I heard an assertion just now that this is closed meeting territory.
No,
And
I said that.
oh.
I don't understand what he's asking.
So,
Renee said she thought it should be handled in a closed meeting.
Yeah.
I did say that. I think that, I don't know what's going to be discussed, but if we're going to be discussing things that will eventually be left to Lakey or legal counsel to negotiate, if we're spilling all the beans before the negotiation, we have nowhere to go. So, right? I mean, so I think that having this conversation in public doesn't work unless we want to just tell everybody where we're going to stand.
Yeah.
Dick?
My understanding is that the subcommittee will be writing a recommendation to the board, and then the board can decide whether, what would be the appropriate venue for discussing that recommendation. But there's nothing formal until the board
Yeah.
debates it.
Okay.
Okay. So let's move on to the final item on our July list, and that was, so one of the things that we had identified was the idea of targeting different channels for reaching membership. Clearly, Lakey has addressed this on some level with the Columbia conversations, but we as a board expressed interest in identifying channels. So at this time, I'd like to just brainstorm. So this is not structured, but, start to discuss to see if we're sort of on the same page or totally not on the same page and where we go from there. So, so for this part of the conversation, I would simply like to talk about what your ideas are. Yeah, Renee?
So I appreciate that we're willing to talk about different avenues to reach our residents, members, both, but I think you have to have a purpose in reaching them. If you just go out and say, hi, I'm, sitting here, I'm from CA, okay, that's nice, but they're not going to remember you a day later. So having a purpose to the conversation helps a lot. And we could come up with 100, TikTok and Instagram, and you can go all these platforms, and you can go in person 100 different ways. But what's the purpose? What are we trying to get out of each meeting? Or, if we're meeting with a village board, what are we trying to accomplish? Those are the kinds of things I think you need to think about first. And then
Okay, let's think about them.
the different venues.
Ginny?
Yeah, I guess I was kind of hoping we'd hear from staff under communications and marketing update from Tim, I believe, first, and then sort of we'd have some questions on that or maybe some suggestions. I don't know.
I'm totally okay with that.
He's right there. I can see him.
It might be
All right,
more
so-
organized than,
But, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I would argue that I don't think it's really our job to come up with the venues. I think it's our job to come up with the goals, like Renee's saying, what are we trying to accomplish? What information do we want to gather? And then that's what staff's expertise is, and we don't know. So I think the idea would be to say, if we really want to know, obviously it's not necessarily just getting members to tell us which communities are we not reaching that we want to reach, and what information do we want to gather from them? Is it just, what do you love about Columbia? What do you wish you could change about Columbia? So I think we need to step up a little bit higher and think about the goal of it. And I feel like we kind of talked about that at the retreat. Like, I kind of feel like this could be in
That's what this is coming from. So let me just put this out there then, because if this is a board priority, are you saying that the board shouldn't have input and we'll just let the staff handle it? In which case,
No.
I'm totally okay with that.
No.
But,
no.
I think it's a board priority that it happens.
Yeah.
okay, but so what I'm saying is, what's our role in it then? That's what I'm trying to identify here.
I think it's to just say, what do we want to learn? What do we want to know from people? What kind of dialogue do we want to start?
Right.
And how do you want to answer those questions?
Well, I think that that's a conversation for the entire board to have. And I
This
think,
is the board. I mean, so we have 25 minutes to talk about it tonight, and that was,
right,
so, I mean, I'm looking to you guys for suggestions on how we proceed with this. So I don't have a structure for I'm not proposing anything. It was our group identified, so like, I appreciate the input. So I'm not saying that, Renee, to put you on the spot. I'm saying, how do you see us answering those questions?
Well, so may I just chime in, since I think one of the reasons this topic was important to us was because we know we're not hearing from lots of people. We know that we're not reaching everyone in Columbia. We know there are demographics and populations and pockets of people that just don't even know what CA is, don't care, and we want to engage the broader community. So I think that was sort of like the ultimate goal. I would say maybe a secondary goal is to improve the DEI work that we're doing by listening to other voices. But I feel like it's kind of open-ended. I mean, I think if I had a question to ask, it would be, what do you want CA to be for you? What do you know about us? What do you not know about us? And what do you want us to be? I mean, I think it can be pretty open-ended.
Okay, we have Alan, and then Tina, and then Renee, and then Lakey.
Okay. First of all, I don't know if it's been noted, but Lynn has joined the meeting.
Yes, I took note, thank you.
Okay. I would suggest that we might, and I don't have language for it, but we take our 5 points of our strategic plan and frame a question or two about each of those that would ask sort of a quantitative and a qualitative, maybe, so how are we doing towards that, and then what do they appreciate that's been done, and what do they see as still missing to be done or lacking in that particular area.
Thank you, Alan. Tina?
I just want to echo what Jess said about our questions can be open-ended. If we don't know what we don't know, then we have to be open to hearing what we're hearing. And I also want to really emphasize that in order to change the paradigm, we do have to ask questions of people who are not here. And so thinking,
that was the whole point of this conversation, identifying how we reach the people who aren't here.
Right. And so brainstorming that, I think, could be very valuable as well.
Renee?
So if you want to know where to go, I would say it's the barber.
Please do not say barbershops.
Yes, I am. I'll go. I have no problem walking in. I mean, I will tell you, people in my community think I'm crazy, but they all know where my door is and knock on it. It's the churches. It's the PTAs. I go stand in the pickup lines for the elementary schools to find out what people think. I mean, that's what outreach is. It's putting boots on the ground and meeting people that you don't see at the gyms.
And so just a follow-up question for that. How do you determine that you have reached the people that you want to reach? So as someone who has worked in marketing research for many years.
Okay, over the course of a year, I go door to door in my village and hit every door once. May not get an answer, but I knock on every door once. That's what I do.
Lakey?
I wanted to clarify that the way this agenda, just the timing worked out, is that obviously back a couple months ago when we met as an operations committee, we put forward the need to provide the board with a communications and marketing update because some of the comments that were made certainly made me feel like a lot of people were not aware of what is actually already happening. Right. It just so happens that those both, popped up in alignment tonight. I want to clarify that my understanding, and so if I'm not clear, I would like to get clear, is that the board priorities that came out of the retreat were not about this is what staff is to do. It was the action the board wanted to take. And so I feel like some of what's being discussed, frankly, not only are we doing, but also would be staff. So I want to be very clear whether we're discussing what the board wants to do as board members, or if we're talking about setting goals that you then want the organization to implement. Because while those aren't necessarily divergent, they are not necessarily the same. So to Jenny's earlier point, right, it just so happens, I mean, we are on the schedule to provide an update about all that we're up to. But I guess I want to be clear that my understanding of what came out of the board retreat and kind of this first step of the 4 were really all board action that then would, potentially intersect with staff. So I don't know if that is accurate, or if we as a group could come to that clarity right now.
Dick?
I'd like to direct everybody's attention to our mission. Kind of sums up what we're talking about. We're trying to engage our diverse community, cultivate a unique sense of place, and enhance quality of life. And that, to me, is what this is all about. Now, I agree with Renee. We have a responsibility as board members to talk to as many people in the community as possible. I know my home phone number is listed, and I get calls all the time. And the last one, people want me to scrub graffiti off a bridge, and we got dealing with that. I mean, so we do get that feedback. We meet with our villages, and that is a responsibility of board members to get out there and engage. But we also have a staff, there's a staff responsibility to communicate, we deal in a retail manner. Staff handles it on a wholesale manner. And so we have some very able communications people who can identify who needs to be communicated with, who needs to be reached out to, and what the best vehicles are for doing that.
Thank you. Jenny?
Yeah, quick point. I understand what you're saying, Renee, and I do a lot of that too. You're learning what an individual thinks. What I'm trying to get us to the point, what I think we're trying to do is get to the point with Tim's help and other staff where we get a baseline as a result of reaching X populations. We identify what, and maybe be able to compare X to Y, et cetera, but that we have a baseline that we can then compare this survey this year to next year, et cetera, next year, the following, with some goals in there as to what we need to do to improve. So that's what I guess I'm looking for. And to answer your question, Lakey, I see this as a partnership between the board and the staff. And I think it's too soon to answer your question of what's staff and what's the board. This is why I'm really excited about this part of the agenda tonight with Tim presenting, and we will have a chance to ask questions, clarifying questions, et cetera. So I think we're just at the beginning stages of what can be an extremely exciting, informative, very worthwhile experience, and creative, I hope, Tim, innovative in terms of we'll do this, several things. It's not one thing that we'll be doing. Town meetings, breakouts, budget options, scenarios, surveys with, whatever, meeting with a specific community on a pizza party or something. A lot of stuff we can be doing, but it's got to be organized and uniform, and it has to have, as you say, what do we want to get out of that, but also something we can evaluate. So that's it. I'm not going to say any more on the subject.
Jess?
No, I just wanted to clarify to Lakey's point, which makes a lot of sense, like, what is staff and what is board? And you're right, Lakey, looking at these, really, it's clear that, oh, sorry, that's our time for this topic. It's really clear that, I think when we were at the retreat and we were talking about it, at least in my mind, it was, these are our goals for CA. Right? But it does, when you look at them more carefully, I mean, clearly, 3 out of 4 of them are a little more clearly board-related work, board goals. And the community engagement, I think it's, at least from my point of view, it's something that I really want CA to improve. And I don't know that the board has the expertise to do that. And I think, honestly, if the board were to try to handle that, we would really flub it. So I see that one as one that really is a lot more staff-driven, and that the board's responsibility is to set some clear goals and make sure that you and the staff know what we're trying to do here. And for me, it's all about, again, diversity, equity, inclusion, getting other people at the table, all that kind of stuff. So I think for us, the role is, yes, we want to participate in like a virtual town hall. We want to create new ways to gather input. But I do think it has to be a partnership because we're not the experts.
100%. I mean, so let's be clear. I never intended for this to be our goal. So I was trying to pull out the pieces that the board had any control over.
Yeah.
So Lakey has a community engagement goal. Tim and Danica have put together a ton of stuff that, that they are doing, and we're going to hear more about that. So I just want to make sure that no one here thinks that I thought we were in control of this, because I most certainly did not, nor would I want to be. But I think I agree that it's a partnership. And so what I was trying to focus on were the pieces that the board has said that they wanted to have some input on. What I'm hearing is that we would rather take a little time and absorb what's going on already. Maybe get the information from some Columbia conversations, maybe have a virtual town hall. There are a number of things that I think are in the queue that, we've seen stuff about our website, enhancements and that kind of thing, making sure that our meetings are well publicized, all of those things. So I agree, it's absolutely a partnership. I think for this particular priority, the board has a very small role, and Lakey and CA have a very large role, and we are sort of along for the ride. So Tina and then Andy.
I would value any resources that the staff might make available in terms of collateral. I do spend a fair amount of time in my village center, for example, and if someone says, hey, what's this about? And I've got a brochure in my back pocket, that's super handy.
You have your cards, right?
Yeah, and they're almost gone.
Okay.
So speaking of which,
Get you more.
I would like some more of those.
Okay.
But I would also, if someone says, wait, you've got a program for kids who get good grades to get free memberships? Yes, go to this webpage, or, here's the information on a flyer, or brochures about
Not very environmentally
the
friendly.
pools. I know, and it's very tangible and gets the message across.
Andy?
Well, so I'm thinking, okay, see now, we're in July, pretty much done. We have a comms plan that was presented to the board, which the board was happy with, which is being followed. And if you think about it, we know of 3 major activities already underway to improve communications. One is the conversation, which is starting. 2 is the general plan sessions that are already being planned. And then 3 is the budget sessions that are kind of, and I'm thinking like, well, I think we just filled the year up. Because that is a lot of time and effort and work. And I am not sure how much more you can add, especially on the staff with us. Because sometimes, I think what you really want to do is maybe fewer, better activities to make sure that those 3 are a success. And then next year you can think of other things. But I got to admit, I've got, it sounds great. We'll have a town meeting. Maybe we'll have 2 or 3. We'll do other things. I'm thinking like, but where do we fit them in? I mean, where do we fit them in with all the stuff we already have ongoing, which we've all said is important and we like it. So I think part of this is the board's got to be really, very realistic that we've already tasked staff, I'll say, in terms of a lot of stuff. And I'm just not sure how much more. It's easy for us. It is really easy for us to come up with ideas and do things. But I'm not the one who has to figure out, I've got, 100 hours and how do I spend it each week? And I really would like these.
Wish I had 100
I'm
hours a
looking at
week.
the person who.
Okay, we're over time, so in order to continue, we would have to vote to
I
add
would just
time.
like to suggest that maybe we just listen to what communications and marketing are doing and just provide some valuable feedback to make sure they're heading in the right direction. I mean, I think that's probably the most useful thing we can do. It seems like the ball's rolling and we're kind of putting the cart before the horse.
I said that a half hour ago, but okay.
I'm just trying to go along with what the board said, but let's move on.
Yeah, okay.
All right, so, no pressure, Tim, but time for communications and marketing update.
Thank you. I know it seems like I must have all the answers here.
I sure hope you do.
I have a presentation. I'm looking forward to going through it. I'm going to try and accelerate through some of the things that are less related to the conversation that you've had just now, so we can just sort of flesh out a little bit, the back and forth between what we're doing on the ground and what we're already implementing and what we're planning, because I think that this is a good dynamic and a good opportunity for us to set direction and understand the partnership and understand the machinery of this. And I've got some notes. We'll see if I can sort of clarify them, but give enough room at the end of this for some good discussion as well. So let me just open up my presentation I do have here, and then I will. Everyone see that okay?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, thanks to you all for giving me some time to talk about what we're doing in communications and marketing. My understanding is that in general terms, we do want to make this more of a regular update. Of course, that I'm available anytime that the board wants to invite me to talk about these things. I've got a few things I want to build into this presentation. One of them is to make a very clear note that the formal name of the department in communications and marketing does fail to mention a really important part of our operations that fits under that department, which is the customer care team, or as a lot of people know it, the Customer Member Service Center, CMSC. I'm adding a few notes to this update on the website as well as a separate topic, because it sort of cuts across all areas of what we do. And at least initially, I was planning to spend about 5 minutes on each with about 10 minutes of discussion at the end. But I'll try and make that a little more concentrated in the areas we want to. Let me move forward here to the next one. Sorry. So picking up, as Andy was saying, where we left off earlier in the year, we had this broad communications framework. And we got to put it in a little context here. It was crafted in the first few months of the tenure of both Danica and I. We started within a few weeks of each other back in late August, September last year. And it's a good map. It continues to guide what we're doing to pursue communication success. But, some of the elements that we've had in this framework, which I've highlighted in green here, related to community engagement sort of very specifically. And as, as an engineer, I had this real need. I've got this real need for structure, for compartmentalization, for developing this machinery. Community engagement campaign, the Columbia Voices were two elements. And I think the intent of those were to have this really good understanding of lowering the barriers for sucking out and connecting with the information, the data, the people, and having this connection to that community, and removing the barriers to getting those voices coming in and helping us understand what matters to people. The reality is, in some ways, that, and as we're sort of discussing now, it's very contextual to what we're talking about here. This I've discovered very clearly, and every month I've been here, there's a little more clarity here, that this is not a muscle we've really flexed a lot in the past, at least not in the communications and marketing department. We've got some really interesting outreach activities that Dennis and his team does, and sports and fitness has the Clarabridge and the engagement they have with the community, and they're very successful in their ways. And obviously, our community services has their audience, and they have a lot of input. But as sort of an outreach function within the department, which should and does exist within communications and marketing, there's a sort of a development of the capacity here, which has to be built out to sort of set the machinery in motion upon which activities and listening and capturing of that data can develop. So we're sort of looking to step back a little bit from these structured approaches of the community engagement campaign, this Columbia Voices model, which was about getting out into the community where people were. And of course, Lakey's got her own very specific experience and vision, and she's sort of pushing us in different ways and giving us new ways to look at it. And it's getting us to shake our sort of sense of what we've done and look at what we can do in a very bold, in a very rapid, and a very sort of iterative way to just get out there and do it. It's going to get a little muddy. It's going to open us up to criticism, and it's going to mean we have to be nimble and less constrained about being in some sort of defensive posture about justifying what we do and justifying what we are and all the things we do. And it's a little hard to understand how that's going to go. But, we're out the gate here. There's things that are already in motion. The discussion this board is having is really, impactful there. And we're on our way. So bringing those two together, we kind of have an adjusted map of the things we do. I can touch, I'm going to get into some of the work we're doing now on the Columbia conversation and what that means. But before I do, let me just sort of step aside for a second and just touch on these other things, these things that we as an organization, as a department, particularly under Danica's expertise and her guidance, have been moving along in these other areas, the messaging campaigns, the response communications, the local coverage. This is the sort of the bread and butter of our communications activities that have been, we were happening before, and we've evolved them to an extent. A couple of points I want to make on those is, first of all, I will make it clear that we at this point, and I know that certain members of the board have a substantial interest in this, and as do I. We don't have a quantitative framework for performance in terms of communications, but I would like to get there. It's going to be the intent. We've sort of got to keep building the machinery and our vision for what it is and what it's supposed to achieve. And we're doing some capacity building and doing certain things better. And at some point down the track, that's sort of one of the directions I want to take this department in. There is absolutely more engaging, more useful content being published through our channels, which includes our social media, our email newsletters, our website, our facilities, and so on, than there has been in the past. And I think our focus on local coverage, which includes sort of amplifying other voices and our partners in the community, it actually tends to make it less about us and more about what's of interest to the community, which I think gives us a better connection. I think it's important to recognize that communications leadership, which is Danica and myself, and now under the guidance of Lakey, is still fairly early in its tenure here, where Danica and I have not yet hit our 1-year anniversary. So, drinking from the fire hose at the beginning and learning all the different intricacies of CA, it's a big learning curve. We're about to enter, Danica and I, our 1-year anniversary, and so we're about to hit that milestone, but we're still in year 1 here. There's a reality here that communications is, in the grand scheme of things, under-resourced. There's some personnel enhancements that Danica needs to do her work at the strategic level and get out of the sort of the tactical and the day-to-day work. And there are things that are underway there. So that's just sort of some of the stuff that's not associated directly with the conversation project and the community engagement. But let me move on to that. This Columbia conversation, and Lakey touched on it a few weeks ago, we've got to figure out how to build this community engagement infrastructure when there isn't this existing set of resources or programs in place already. And as I mentioned, what we're doing is we're just doing it. We're declaring our intent, we're having some first conversations, and we're working on how to scale it and then iterate it from there. I think, as an aside, that distinction that was mentioned between sort of the retail and the wholesale, I think is very informative, that idea that we can have as many one-on-one conversations, and as board members, you're out there talking to people and you're absorbing it. I think that I see our role in this space to have a little bit of a different texture, which is I've got to build the machinery that allows us to capture all of those conversations. And rather than it being sort of this anecdotal absorption of those information pieces, we've got to figure out how to capture it all in an effective way. to scale it, to know that every conversation has sort of an equal impact, and then to analyze and synthesize that and provide it to this group and leadership of the organization as essentially the consumers of that information. And that takes a little bit of a different set of thinking, a little bit of a different set of mechanics to do that. So this initiative that we're building out in this space called the Columbia Conversation, it's something in some ways that we're building out for the near term, and in its current form, it's the manifestation of that community engagement. But I'm not sure that the sprints we're doing now to get it out the door are going to really extend beyond the summer or the fall before we start to try and sort of build it into a more longer term set of sort of in-person outreach, collateral development, collateral distribution, partnership-based activities that become more of an inherent part of our communications and marketing infrastructure. But at the moment, we're sort of getting out there, and in a lot of cases, we're, as an organization and institutionally, we're sort of knocking on doors in a way and just sort of starting with some small talk. We're saying, hey, how you doing? We're here, and what can we talk about? To some of the points that were made before, I think we're very mindful that we don't know what we don't know, and we don't know what it is that we should be talking about until we just sort of shut up for a minute, get there in person, be present, and allow some of those conversations to come to us. There's going to be a little bit of pulling at those threads. There's going to be a little bit of us, going where those conversations take us, and then to try and build that into our culture and our enduring infrastructure of our organization. So we're doing certain things. When it comes down to the mechanics of it, this is where the rubber hits the road. And so what does that actually mean? Well, we have a website, columbiaconversation.org, and it features some of the current information. There's a blog being built in the background. There'll be some activities there. We are building equipment that allows us to go out to spaces, whether it's cul-de-sacs or coffee shops or pools or anywhere, and have a listening pod, a listening station where if we want to sort of capture a conversation, we can invite people to declare their opinions, their preferences, their priorities, and for us to have it and pull it into our systems and analyze it, and then to have those pieces being accessed by the community. We've got to do some campaigns to get the word out. Slowly at first, but the momentum is going to build from there. It comes down sort of to this basic premise. If you have something important to say about Columbia, we're listening. Is it good? Is it bad? At this point, we're not even looking to sort of ask you whether you have favorite things or things you hate. We're just trying to sort of be there and show up. How does that actually work? We're inviting people, one-on-one to start with, but we're looking to multiply that in different ways to a blog process, and we're looking for some prominent voices to sort of put that blog post in and then have that shared with their network, and then have a universal opportunity to submit your 1,500-word, declaration of what Columbia is or what Columbia should do. We have these in-person listening stations, and we're building a Facebook group. And a lot of this, I want to make sure it's clear, is separate and distinct from ca.org and the actual operations we have for our facilities and memberships and programs. We want to keep those things a little separate for the purposes of maintaining, the operational integrity of the organization without this sort of overwhelming it. All of these platforms are there for us to invite people in, to get what's in their brain or in their heart or in their gut into words and give us the raw material from which we can extract some real insight. All of these platforms are ready. They're close to being ready. We had the listening station set up at one of the CNSL meets last week. I've got some people writing blog articles. We're pushing hard to get the Facebook group up and running. And so, I'm right on the precipice of having sort of some of these things open. I'm not sure what the response is going to be honest, when we start really showing up in these spaces and giving this community, a real easy and frictionless voice. Maybe it's going to be lancing a boil. Maybe it's going to be a lot of fans will come out of the woodwork. We'll see what happens. To the point we were talking about before, you and others in the villages and some of our partners and so on are going to represent solid channels for promoting the initiative and bringing people in. And as we generate findings for getting that stuff out too, we want to make sure we're bringing content in, we're reflecting it, we're analyzing it, and we're sending it back out. Is this what you meant? Is this what you think? Are these your priorities? there's all these things which are inherent multipliers. If you're participating, we want you to share that you've participated, and then let other people in your community sort of see that as a thing that's got a value too. There's going to be some silly stuff, some fluff, some surveys, some what's your favorite this, or top 5, what village should you be from based on your personality, scavenger hunts, some games, some entertainment, and these are sort of intended to grab attention. I'm got some conversations with the chamber, the EDA, the leadership in CA, to engage the business community in a more dedicated way. So I wish I had a little more crystallization tonight to sort of share with you. It'll be more so in a week. It'll be even more so in a couple of weeks, and you'll start being consumers of that. As I sort of mentioned, the machinery is probably the hardest part to sort of figure out to get in place, so that we're not just going out and letting the conversations blow away in the wind, but having a way to really, really nail down what people are telling us, and then following that in a structured and complete way. We won't control this conversation. We've got to be prepared to see where it goes, and that's going to be interesting. So let me just put a pin in that for a moment. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the other aspects of communications and marketing for a minute, and then there'll be some time for discussion. I mentioned the community care team, CMSC, lovely picture of Cindy there as just outside the room that many of you are in. We opened that up the last few weeks, and that's been a delight for people to come back in again. I want to make a quick point about just some of the ways that this team on its own provides a touch point within the community. If you just look at the numbers from in this fiscal year, I asked Jen to put together some of the contact numbers from May 1st just to mid this month, which is not quite the full quarter yet. And there's 15,000 sort of individual calls, emails, pieces of engagement there, and even if we allow for a duplication for some of those to be overlapped, we're talking about potentially 10% of every person that lives in Columbia proper being engaged and having a conversation with us in some ways in this context, just in this quarter so far. These guys manage such scale, and they do it with such grace and with such expertise. And it's sometimes easy sort of to not just really acknowledge that they're doing some of this really high value work because they do it so seamlessly. So there's a whole range of other things that team does as well, and I think that many of you have got some sense of it, but maybe not all of it. The CA Points program is such an important thing for that community of people that use it. These guys are building out a knowledge base to make sure that every interaction they have is actually building on itself to give themselves an expertise that's sort of a cloud-based process for them, also they can share knowledge more easily. Obviously, they did the work to get ourselves open at the headquarters again. Jen and her team are participants constantly in these cross-team initiatives where their insights into what the conversations are day to day, what the inquiries are, what the sentiments are feeding into different things we do. And of course, the last year, they've had a lot of data stewardship. The freezes and the unfreezes, it was never built in as part of our system. So they've had to do a lot of management of that data just based on the fact that we had this unanticipated situation. So I'll sort of put that's the customer care team. That's where they are. I'm looking forward to sort of seeing what else we can sort of build them and push some resources to them and make that an even better part of our organization. But I just give a lot of kudos to those guys for what they do every day. We haven't talked about marketing. I've come to you as a board, and we've talked about communications and the communications plan and the structure. The marketing piece is obviously very, very important. And you touched a little bit before on the dashboard, the advertising effectiveness report. That's, I own that. That's a template that was put in place before my tenure, and it says a certain thing. The reality is that effectiveness report is to some extent a black box. It sort of represents the amount of money we spend or the amount of resources we deploy on getting the word out, and then the total number of memberships that come about with not a lot of connection between. There's assumptions made about whether or not that marketing activity is inherent in the actual outcomes of those membership sales. What we're looking to do now, what my sort of change management here and retooling this department has been, is to get rid of that black box. I want to be able to see that if we're putting resources into advertising, marketing, we're looking for membership prospects, that we can track those, that we can see what's working, what's not, and we can make better use of the resources we've been given to give ourselves the outcomes we need. The org structure within the marketing team was fundamentally changed within the first few months of me being here. And that was largely built around making sure that people had their roles based around objectives. So we have individuals in our marketing team now who are specialists in lead generation, who are specialists in revenue program sales, specialists in member retention. That's the roles that we fit them in, so that their objectives and their missions are to enhance those parts of our marketing machinery. And one of the best examples is this chart that you see, which is my favorite performance chart that I've got, which shows since January, the red line is this decline in cost per lead. Now, one of those fundamental marketing metrics we have is how much it costs to get a metric in the door. And we have advertising activities, we have promotional activities that bring people in and either make a phone call to us or complete a web form. In January, we started measuring that specific campaign-specific set of activities, and we were in that $100+ Not a terrible outcome in the fitness industry. It's a little high, but since giving our team the clear and targeted objective of running those campaigns and optimizing it, we've been able to decline that now over that period of time, where we're now under $10 per lead on average over a 7-day average, which is an enormous increase in the efficiency of our marketing resources. I'm so proud of what the team has done by giving them a clear objective to meet, and they are working to optimize that. This has gone alongside us actually saving some money by bringing those activities in-house. We were putting a lot of our marketing activities to agencies, and they were charging us a certain amount of money for the service of doing this, and then spending our money on the advertising. I think we're better off bringing that expertise in-house, and this chart shows that. I will say that this was riding a wave. There's a certain part of this success, I think, that came from the fact that we emerged from COVID in the 6-month period. The sales team under Dan has got a lot of credit for the sales outcomes that were record-breaking this last month or so. But we were able to take the enhanced interest in people returning to these activities and get them in the door in a cheaper and more efficient way than we have. The next thing we want to do to build on this is to move on to how we do this same thinking across the various program sales. The fitness membership marketing is the big thing we do. It's got the most revenue associated with it. It's got the most budget and the most effort associated with it. But if you do the accumulation of all of the program areas we have that also make revenue for us, the tennis lessons, the after-school care, swimming lessons, art center classes, each one of those has got an opportunity for us to do a similar thing, and we just need to prioritize and work our way through the infrastructure of that at the same time. I'm running out of time. I want to just take one more minute or so, and really I'm not going to touch very deeply on this. The website has got a lot of information. It's got some issues. It's got some opportunities for improvement. I want to sort of not dump on it too much, but I know what is challenging about it. The real bottom line is the website is a result of the methods and systems that have been used to manage and maintain it over the years. I mean, that's how this sort of thing comes around. It's a driver and car and vehicle situation. You can have a great vehicle you build, but if the driver is banging it all over the road, fixing that vehicle doesn't help if you can't fix the ways that it's being driven. It's inherent to the way that the website has been managed over the last several years. It's a request-based system. We allow for teams across the organization to ask us for their changes or their updates or their new information, and we implement it. And it just limits what it can be, and it makes it an unorganized and poor website in a lot of ways. It makes it very variable in terms of style and functionality, and prioritization systems are not right. You can look at a website as a combination of its design, its navigation, its content, its functionality. And if we just fix the website for those things, again, it's only going to be a one-time fix. We can spend a lot of resources, and unless you change the things around it, it won't make it any better. So we have these various elements. We have the roles and the culture. How do we actually interact with our team partners in the various facilities, in the program areas, to make sure that everyone knows whose responsibility it is to communicate the stuff that they have, the programs we have, the benefits of our organization to our audience. It's not the program teams per se. Their role is one thing. Our role is to communicate that effectively, and we need to come together in a consolidated way and change the way those roles work. The systems and practices, again, moving away from this request-based system and having more of a planning environment is going to be important to that, and we're building that out. And expertise and capacity. We've got some opportunities. We're making some moves in our staff. We've got different people managing these things now. We've got third-party resources coming in from specifically some user interfaces and some design. And we're going to try and build that not so much into a one-time change, but into the infrastructure of how we go about doing that. The last thing I'll touch on here is that the website does have those twin roles of being a marketing hub for us. So as we flesh out the program sales areas and the ways that we want to bring the marketing expertise we've demonstrated in the fitness area into the program sale areas one by one, there's going to be changes that are made. The thing is, they're not obvious because they're landing pages behind the scenes, but they have a functionality toolkit that allows us to perform better from a marketing perspective. The section updates that do need work, they're a little unorganized, they need better clarity, they need better consistency. We'll attack them one by one. The tennis, the clubs, the open space, these are areas that are big, they're complicated, they need a lot of wholesale work. Art center, sports park, ice rink, there's these other ones that are smaller, that may be easier, and so we're trying to figure out how to prioritize a lot of small ones versus a couple of big ones. Aquatics and school-age services, a little bit of seasonality there, so we may look at aquatics. We did some quick updates this year. We'll plan for more as the season sort of comes to some prepare next summer. And similarly with school-age services, as the next school year gets underway, there'll be an opportunity to look at the longer-term work there. I'm sorry, I've tried to accelerate through that last bit as quickly as I can. I'm going to shut up for a minute, allow for discussion and questions. I'm sorry I've left 6 minutes instead of 10. I hope that was useful. Thank you all.
Tim, that was great information. Thank you.
Yeah.
Does anybody have questions?
Yeah, just a quick one.
Yeah, Jenny?
Yeah, hi, Tim, fantastic presentation. Compliments to you and your staff. On the customer care data,
yep.
Do you have any frequently asked questions? Are you keeping track of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not necessarily structured as an FAQ per se. The knowledge base is a manifesto, is a version of what tools they have, which is shared spreadsheets and sort of commonly asked questions that they've shared around in different ways. The knowledge base provides this extra opportunity for anyone to contribute to it and clean it up and have some procedural elements about step 1, step 2, step 3. So, it's an FAQ that we're trying to develop into much more of a platform that team can use, and not only use as a immediately available resource when a question comes up, very searchable, type in a few keywords and you'll get the collective information, the collective wisdom of that team, but it's a great training tool for additional staff. And it's got opportunities to even, surface issues and common issues that will come up over and over again, and then give us ways to sort of get ahead of those or treat them differently or pull stuff out of it. So the answer, Ginny, is yes, it contains FAQ, but we want to, Jen's leading the charge and making that so much more.
Yeah, let me just ask a quick follow-up. What I'm trying to get at is, this is very time-consuming, either the emails or the calls that your staff are getting. Therefore, part of it could be just people coming back, and this is not, say, typical. The other, though, it could be very time-consuming where you're suddenly going to be asking for a lot more staff, which is a financial issue. However, are you learning that maybe if you improve the website or outreach or something, you wouldn't be getting all those questions?
I think that's
not all of them, but I mean some of them. There's categories that perhaps. Okay.
It's interesting. It's one of the habits that I think we've had in this organization, that in any section of the website, we have got an FAQ. And I think an FAQ can be sometimes useful. My concern is that it becomes a crutch, that you can just sort of dump anything in there, and then it becomes so full and so long and so complicated that people just then want to give you a call. So there's a calibration of that to be able to make sure that you can sort of have the website and the journey that people are going through the website and those sorts of things, addressing people's common issues, and having an FAQ in quotes, being manifested in having the right information surfaced at the right time. And as you say, that's part of just having better strategic website planning and better strategic website design, rather than sort of this existing systematic way of just sort of pushing out to teams and saying, we'll handle any changes you want to make, and just sort of adding up this Frankenstein's monster of a layered sort of thing that just everyone just then wants to call. So I think it works both ways. If we can make the website better, we actually will reduce the burden on the customer care team. at the same time.
And Tim, as a follow-up to that, do you see a future where we would use chatbots or something like that to answer those frequent questions, or is that too frustrating for what?
It's not frustrating. It's something that I know has come up. I asked my team that, I think, in the first few weeks, and it's like, yes, they've been around that 2 or 3 times. There was an attempt at one point made with, I think, some Facebook infrastructure to make that a sort of an online chat. There's a lot of automations that have come about the last 5 years where you can have, common questions answered or some sort of AI in there that is very much off the shelf. I feel it's just a sequence. We will get there. I don't think there's any doubt that that should be a feature of what we do. And I just think we've got higher priorities in terms of the basic mapping of the website and improving that as the first line of giving people what's necessary. And I would hate to take resources away from that much more urgent situation to put into technology that's going to eventually be there for us. But I don't think there's any question we'll get there.
Alan?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I love the work, and for me, there's like a fence that I think we need to move beyond. I remember a few years ago, I remember looking at the Reston website, Reston Association, and looked at ours at the same time. And with the Reston website, I got a feel for their community and for the opportunities that their residents had through the Reston Association to have an impact on the community. Our website looked like a marketing thing for sports and fitness.
Yep.
And I've heard you talk about customers, and I've heard you talk about us as a sports and fitness organization. And we have customers, and we certainly have that aspect to us. The part that I think we're sorely lacking is in the community engagement piece, and I don't mean just asking people what they want, but the sense of CA as, again, the values vision leader in the community, and connecting people to the community and to each other within the community. So I hope that as we are looking at website enhancements, we're thinking beyond that list that you had a couple of slides ago.
Yeah, and I think that's a really insightful and critical part of what needs to drive us. I think that there's a level of frontline, immediate mechanics that I need to deal with to sort of rectify things that are broken in terms of existing, customer flows for the things that we have transactional activities. And I don't sort of apologize for the fact that that's going to be a first rescue mission for some of these elements. And we've been working on those the last few months. The need to flesh out the website and our existing set of collateral or content or the way we talk about it includes everything we do. And as you say, Alan, that's not just the memberships or the program sales. It's the open space. It's the existence of our community resources. It's the activities that people can volunteer in. And Dennis is a great partner in helping us sort of see what we can do to sort of manifest that online and with some community interaction. I think that I've got a very close partnership, obviously, with Dan and Michelle Miller in her programming areas, and the work that Dennis does to maintain and make available that set of resources for the community is something that we're not yet manifesting on the website and our other community. We're doing, I think, more of that on the social media, which we've got a little bit more of a dynamic ability to update on a regular basis. All that to say, I agree with you, Alan, and I want to see that customer base. I mean, the terminology is one thing. The customer base is anyone that's a stakeholder for if you start looking at it from a big enough perspective. Certainly our annual charge lien holders and so on are a huge customer base. Our businesses, they all need to be able to see the value and experience the value and understand how to connect with what Columbia is and what Columbia Association has to offer. It will continue to work to make that a reality in everything we do.
We're out of time, Dick, so in order for you to ask a question, we have to vote to take additional time. Is it critical?
No, I can handle it.
All right, thank you so much, Tim.
Thank you. Sure, thank you.
Okay, we're on to the questions only section of the agenda. Are there any questions? Tina.
I wanted to ask about the DEI committee, the staff DEI committee, and their pronouns presentation. I don't know if that would help them and thank you for my new name tag. I'm wondering if we could consider getting new name tags with our pronouns. As a board member, I would love to show my support for that by doing so.
I can check into that. I'm not sure how we order our name tags, but yes, thank you for picking up that we're going to be rolling out the use of pronouns across the organization.
Andy?
Thanks, Lake. I appreciate the report. The one that caught my eye was on page 3, the challenges, the last one. Staffing is obviously, an extreme challenge, particularly as more people kind of engage with us and that. And I was just, would like you to think, if you might have some ideas you could come back to the board with, that perhaps the board could do things differently that would reduce our use of staff time. We've gotten into historical, we've always got this report, or we got this thing, or we do it this way. And I know we're under staff problems. And just a thought for you that perhaps in the future, if there's anything you'd like to bring back to the board, that perhaps it would.
Did you plant this?
Help out the staff.
Did you pay him?
Thank you so much for that comment, Andy.
But I've been a manager, so I've been a manager with hundreds of people.
So I would say that is a fair representation. I would also say that as I have come in and staff, I've already talked about this with the senior leadership team, but also across our management team, which is almost 100 in total. And I think in an older organization that we can all have different reasons as to perhaps the why. Maybe people felt they weren't getting information or didn't understand things. But I have actually started inventorying it before I brought a new process forward. I wanted to have some data to demonstrate the time impact. So I will actually be bringing forward a suggestion on a process based on just other organizations I've been in and kind of how to manage the requests, because I think we also need to kind of hold each other accountable at the board level for vetting. Do we all agree this is actually something we want to spend staff time on? So I actually intend to put forward a process. I have mentioned this to the chair, just that conceptually I would like to bring it forward. So apparently you are telepathic. Thank you for your question. I will be following up.
And I think the other point on that one is it also increases the transparency for the rest of the board into all of the requests that are being made, who's making them, and therefore you don't have to repeat requests or ask for the same information if it's already been provided. And I'd like to see something where if it goes to one board member, it goes to all board members. Maybe some people think that's spam, but I think it just allows us to all receive the same information and be working from the same information. Any other questions?
I think Alan has something.
He agreed.
Well, I agree, but I guess I don't need you to say, Lakey, any more than you've already said about staffing, but I appreciate, by the way, that you have the challenges that CA is addressing, but I'm struck by the increasingly challenging across multiple departments and divisions around staffing. And I guess that sort of raised it's like we're treading water now. We're finding ways to manage. After a while, the tide rises and treading water doesn't work. So I'm wondering if you'd say a little bit more about that bullet.
I would say, I touched on it earlier when we were talking about lifeguards in particular, but again, I'd extrapolate that across hourly. I will say that we have to be realistic that right now we are at a seasonal peak, so that has its own dynamic. The difference between our year-round full-time, year-round part-time, and then what we call seasonal, because you have to remember we have part-time, fitness instructors that work, an hour a week when before and after school care is in session. That's a split shift that actually doesn't quite crest, I'd say, into full-time. So I think we have a lot of complexity in how our staff is structured as a starting point. So I think that we have focused as you're indicating, kind of how are we planning ahead, we have focused, trying to think, I can at least 3 departments off the top of my head that I've had this conversation with about cross-training, and that we are starting to do that a lot more. It started during the pandemic. Certainly, I'm not bringing that as a new idea. Senior leadership was already headed down that road. But I think that's also something that we have found some positive staff response to, frankly, kind of the opportunity to learn something different. We're trying to be very mindful to not stretch anybody too thin or not bear down on the same teams. So I have actually been pushing a couple of teams that have been much more conservative in their hiring and getting back staff that they needed to be a bit more aggressive on that hiring. So I think we're feeling pretty comfortable about where we are, but we're all scratching our heads on what's next and really trying to plan ahead.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, quick one. Yep. On the Columbia conversation here, you, has it died? I mean, is it increasing in the number of responses, or what do you mean here? Initial launch was good, but then where are we? I mean,
So it hasn't died, so we launched it. The comment, if you're talking about in the challenges section, is that what you're referring to?
so I mean, is it gone down?
I think what we're trying to indicate is that what we know going into this is that we will have to keep engagement. You don't launch it and then,
right.
okay, hope that's done. So we're keeping that as a challenge. We'll have to find new and fresh ways to keep people engaged.
Is that what you mean?
We're
Okay.
aware of the challenge and, kind of strategizing for that. But the initial launch, we've been very happy with, and as Tim already indicated, we started doing some in-person pieces, so it'll be a build-out of an effort, but we're challenging ourselves that we know we've got to stay very vigilant.
Do you have an understanding of how many responses you've gotten in the first couple
I don't know
weeks?
that number off the top of my head. I mean, I can report that. I can follow up on that.
Okay.
Okay. Next up, we're moving on to reports and presentations, fiscal year 2021 audited financials, and fourth quarter financial report.
I believe that we were going to have Andy make a comment from the audit committee because we did just have our year-end report and audit report. And then I also asked Susan to give a brief overview instead of it being only questions. So I just wanted to make sure that we touched on the information, but we asked Andy as vice chair of the audit committee to just report on our last meeting that we had just this week.
Yes, we had a meeting on Tuesday. It was quite good. It was the audit committee, some senior staff, and also our independent auditors were present. Just to remind you, our independent auditors are Clifton, Larson, and Allen. And there were 2 main topics that were presented and discussed at the audit committee meeting. One was the fiscal year 2021 fourth quarter reports, which is basically the end of the year reports. And then the second main topic was the independent auditors' findings and discussions. The board, the audit committee did review all the documents, had quite a discussion, and voted to send them to the board. And so that's why they're here. And as Lakey said, Susan will kind of give you a little bit of an overview. But I would say that overall, the audit committee was extremely pleased with how the fourth quarter turned out. Given the type of year we've had, and given where we started, because I think everybody on the board remembers those, except Tina, remembers those meetings in April and May and the changes, but overall, it came out very positive. In regard to the independent auditors, they presented their report. They issued an unmodified, which means a clean opinion, which is as good as you can get. They were very appreciative of the cooperation they got from staff. And they said, that makes it so much easier. And they actually mentioned Lakey, too, who always made sure the staff was available for them. The audit committee actually met with just the independent auditors without any CA staff members, and it was, I think, a very good conversation, good discussion. And so I would say overall, things went pretty well, and you all should have access. I believe you were all given access to the actual closed meeting documents, which include the auditor's comments. And so, as I said, it went very well. It was very good.
Thank you, Andy.
So I would just expand a little bit on the audited financial statements. So those statements so the important points to keep in context regarding those are that the financial statements and the footnotes belong to the organization. So they're the CA's financial statements and footnotes. So the staff prepares them, and then the independent auditors review and audit and evaluate them and issue then their report, which was, as Andy described, an unmodified or a clean opinion. So the auditors use generally accepted, so we do the statements in what's called generally accepted accounting principles, or GAAP, US GAAP. That's the principles applied in the US. And then the auditors, who are independent, and their independence is validated and with the audit committee every year before this starts, they use generally accepted auditing standards for the US. And they put a great deal of their energy and attention to understanding and testing the internal controls for the purposes of determining the nature and the timing and the accuracy of the financial statements. So, and this was the second year that process was virtual, and we managed that well, and they had the access to the documents that they needed and the people that they needed as were needed. So, and this year, because our goal or our responsibility is to complete the audits by the end of July, we align that with the timing of the audit of these meetings. So this meeting is actually a week earlier than it would ordinarily be, or could be, because of July 1st being a Thursday. So it doesn't sound like much, but that week of acceleration is meaningful and causes some additional tension, I'll say. But the staff did great, and most of them are on vacation next week. For the for the financial statement, we use the same format and present quarterly financial statements to the audit committee and to the community. These will be posted on the website in the general financial statements section after tonight's meeting. So the protocol is they are still draft until they are shared with or presented to the board. So we present the finals. For the fourth quarter report, that's a detailed, in-depth look at the income statement or the statement of activities, or P&L of the organization. And so that format is very detailed. It's in a department, sums up to departments, but it shows each of the major programs and activities. It shows lots of line item detail of budgeted income items and expenses. And so we're comparing actual to budget and year over year. So I would just say that the year over year comparison, the reason for the variances is almost universally COVID-19, right? So that just we closed mid-March in 2020, so that was 6 weeks in 2020, but it was a chunk of 2021. And for programs like school age services, it was through March. That did not really come anywhere close to rebounding. Actual budget, significant variances, and we brought these up at the third quarter. Annual charge revenue, when we were doing this budget back in May of 2020, we did not have any sense of how long this pandemic would last and impact CA. And we were concerned about collection and special tax measures that were being discussed by various governing entities, which did not occur. And so there was a significant, over an 8% variance in annual charge. Other things that were favorable were that the budget was based on a September 1 opening, and the outdoor tennis and golf opened mid-May, and the indoor facilities mid-June. But there was a very slow return for some of the services. So we managed our expenses to those revenues and had a favorable year. One-time thing that occurred that you'll see is a significant variance is the closing of Haven on the Lake, and that creates accounting transactions related to closing that resulted in a one-time loss on the financial statements, but that's, I think, which was also partially offset by the sublease that we were able to get in place in mid-May. So those are the kind of the big picture review, and I'm happy to take any questions or have other comments from the audit committee members present this evening.
Any questions? Lakey.
I just wanted to say that my tenure is very new, so I certainly will take no credit for the performance. But I did want to say that I have worked in organizations that unfortunately have been coming out of a problem with finance, or I've even been present in helping bring an organization that had suffered from fraud and had a lot of cleanup and process to deal with. So I just want to say that I have been so impressed by the team already, but hearing from the external auditors, unmodified is like such a financial, like, it sounds so not exciting, and it's like excellent, fantastic, gold star, fantabulous. And for anybody that's still hanging on to the viewing, just know that that is what it means. And it really is a level of excellence that this team has achieved to exterior standards. But the standards I see them hold themselves to every day in terms of performance and work ethic is quite high, and I have found it impressive. I've been very encouraged and very glad to have them on my side of the table for the team.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, Andy.
I just want to say, given the whole year and given all the problems that we had when we started, it is really, really good to see that we came through it with a positive bottom line and laid the foundation really to continue to grow. It's a lot of work, and we've talked about the problems with some staffing. We just can't do things. We can't we're going to continue to have them, but at least we got through one of the roughest years in a positive sense, and so we can build on the future. And I do want to thank Lakey, and I want to thank the staff.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Andy. And thank you. Yes, I second that. All right, any other questions on, yes,
I do have a question. I think the audit committee did a great job reviewing the auditing procedures, talking to the auditors, but I'm not sure who's responsible for looking at the financial well-being of CA. It's not the audit committee. So we have a $65 million company that nobody's responsible for reviewing the financial well-being at the board level. It's not in our charter at the audit committee. Is that correct? I tried to put it in and everybody voted it down. And the board doesn't do it. So I just want you to understand that no one at the board level is responsible. Or conversely, we're all responsible, and that we're legally responsible.
What duties and obligations and,
We have an obligation.
yeah, the fiduciary responsibilities.
Yes, we do. Just laying it out there.
Andy?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I mean, we are all, we all as the board, as board members have fiduciary responsibility. I'm thinking like, I remember sitting on the village board and I signed that statement, which says, which all of us hopefully have signed, which says we have that financial, responsibility. I mean, there's a difference between, I'll say, a formal, dedicated process and other ways. I would say that the board over a number of years and continues, one, they look at the budget. And we're changing the way we're doing the budget to try to kind of adopt to some new ideas. But that, in a sense, looks at the health of the organization. We had the audit committee to kind of look at the financial reports, which once again kind of tell us where we're headed.
But you specifically, at the audit committee, everyone voted down changing the charter to include reviewing the financial well-being of this organization.
Right, because that really is a board responsibility. That is really a board
And we could have a finance
responsibility.
committee to do it.
It's a discussion for the board. That was one of the possible topics we talked about.
I'm just telling you that if something goes
As a board, we
sideways-
decided that
Would you
that
like to
didn't
add
make
that
the
as a
list
future
this year.
agenda item?
No, I won't, because I've been on this bandwagon for 3 years.
Yeah, it's an
Well,
item for future
here's,
discussion.
this is all I will say about, this is a general statement, and that is, there are questions, there are answers, and then there are suggestions for solutions. And so what I hope for the board is that if you have an issue, then you suggest a solution. So you suggested one to the audit committee, that didn't work, but a finance committee. So I'm just saying that if you're concerned about it, then I'm asking you to suggest a solution. Susan and then Tina?
And I would say that even with a finance committee, that would not resolve the issue of the board's ultimate responsibility. So the board is ultimately responsible. There's no question about it. And how you do it is important, but it doesn't remove that key responsibility.
I agree with you, but I'm sitting on a board where the average level of financial education is about 2 hours. Okay, that came from your staff. And we have a $65 million budget. I think that this organization and our residents deserve a finance committee that not only has board members on it, but outside finance specialists that know how to review financial statements and can make suggestions to the board of things that they consider concerning that need to be addressed.
And that was the point of the audit committee reviewing the statements, to have the expertise.
But they refuse to put it in their charter and take that responsibility.
I think that.
Jackie, is that correct?
We all have to be responsible, though. That is the.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, but remember, there's a difference between, I mean, the audit committee does review, the audit committee will make suggestions. In fact, there may be some suggestions coming to the board in a couple months. But ultimately, it is the board's responsibility, and we cannot put that off on the audit committee, which is why I think the audit committee said, no, it's not. That responsibility really resides with the board. It's the board who has the fiduciary. The audit committee can help. The audit committee can review the statements. The audit committee can can tell you whether they make sense. The audit committee can talk to the auditor. I mean, the board, any of the board members could have come to talk with the auditors too. You know, so at most, what the audit committee can do is kind of advise the board, I mean, help, but it's the board's responsibility. And that's why I think it's got to be the board.
Okay, so I'd like to cut off the conversation. 'cause
Tina?
It's not changing.
Are you all familiar with a group called Board Source? Used to be called the National Center for Nonprofit Boards. If you have the ability, or I don't know if CA wants to work a deal for all of us, it is a membership organization, the purpose of which is to train people to be effective, responsible members of boards of directors. I mean, it's not like anything that we're going through hasn't already been endured by some other board somewhere. And I hate to break that to all of us, we're not that original. But, you know, other boards have endured this, other boards have done solutions, other boards have failed colossally, and there's case studies and there's information and there's resources that are available. And if you join as an individual, it's $125, I think. And I might recommend that you consider that for your own education. They talk about there are 3 legal responsibilities of nonprofit board members: duty of care, duty of loyalty, and duty of obedience. So,
Thank you.
Move on.
Andy?
Well, since we're talking about this, and I've been thinking, we have the audit committee. We have some very good outside people on the audit committee.
We need finance specialists, not auditing
And
specialists.
I didn't say, I said, well,
They're
we have
different.
some very good people on the auditing committee. And, you know, maybe we could tap their expertise to ask them if there might be some, I'll say suggestions of metrics or benchmarks that the board could use to do CA's monitoring of financial health to kind of help the board, you know, instead of us trying to do it. But I mean, you know, we could ask the audit committee, we could ask them to see if they would look into some of this.
They don't have the expertise.
Okay, Alan and then Jess.
Yeah.
Our overtime.
Yeah, okay, we're over time.
First of all, for, just so people know, we have used Board Source in the past, so we're not unfamiliar with it.
Thank you.
What's stopping us from creating a finance committee? I mean, I get that there's overlap between a finance committee and a budget and the audit committee, but they are different. And we've been sort of using our audit committee as a finance committee in a sense, and maybe it's time to separate the functions.
Jess and then Jackie.
I just wanted to propose a new topic for a future meeting, which would be to have this discussion about board financial oversight process, so we are not
Can you hold that till
discussing it
propose
now.
new topics?
Well, I thought we were done talking about the financial report. I thought
Jackie
we were
has a
talking-
comment, and
Okay.
then we can move on to that. Thank you.
I thought we were done.
Jackie, last comment.
A quick comment that, first of all, the 2 resident community experts on the audit committee are financial experts. They're not just audit professionals. They are CFOs and CPAs and are very knowledgeable as far as finances and financial reporting. And I just wanted to just give a quick qualification that in the audit committee charter, the audit committee is responsible from an oversight perspective for things like the financial reporting process system of internal controls in the audit process. With that, you can have a finance committee, but as Susan said, ultimately it is the board. It's the board's fiduciary responsibility to provide strong, sound financial leadership, ensure long-term financial stability of the organization through approval of the budgets and a lot of other significant decisions that the board makes. So again, how you get there is probably another conversation, but having a finance committee in and of itself, which is not a bad idea, does not remove that responsibility from the board.
But it is best practices.
Okay, we're over time, so if we'd like to continue, we need to vote to add additional
Another
time.
week. Okay.
Are we on proposed new
Okay,
topics?
so yes, proposed new topics. Jess is first up.
I would like to propose that we have this discussion about the process for board financial oversight at a future meeting, since people would like to talk about it.
Is Jackie talking to us?
Jackie, are you talking? Because if you are on mute.
I am not talking.
Oh, okay. Just making sure.
You're singing.
Thank you.
Ginny.
Would you like to? Okay, just two quick things. One, if, like, you could perhaps look into my request about the study of the community, CA advisory committees was done in June. It was on the minutes for June 24th, and doesn't seem to be getting on the board tracking list.
What's the study?
Okay. It was a request a couple of months ago, and again, and is in the minutes, to look at the CA advisory committees as to, and I know you're working on it, I just don't know why it's not on the tracking thing. That's all there is. You know, as to purpose, as to how we appoint them, because maybe then we could be looking more at diversity options, et cetera. It's been discussed. The second request,
Yeah,
though.
can I just point something out, though? Under questions only, we have board tracking form, so that would have been the right spot for that, just for future
I've been
reference.
trying to get it on there is the point
Okay.
I'm making. It's here in the minutes. It says
Gotcha.
it was going to be on there.
Okay, I just wanted to point out that that was on their agenda.
What?
Okay, just next point.
It's not, oh, not on mine, okay. The next one we're still on board tracking?
We've passed board tracking 20 minutes ago, but if you have a new
I mean,
topic.
I'm sorry, proposed new topics, right.
Yes, proposed new
That I would like
topics,
to
that's
get
where we are.
on the board tracking.
Okay.
Okay, sorry, that's what I meant.
Okay.
Proposed other topic, tonight we did sort of a one-shot deal on the cash reserves and said, you know, any surplus can go to environment. What I'd like to see the board explore with the village managers, and I know this would be part of the management contract, and I don't know if that's coming up in a year or two, but look at making this a more permanent thing so that we encourage the villages, perhaps above the 20%, this goes to environmental things and how we'd work together. Spell it out more, but I'd love to see that not be just one thing in this year. I really want to see it as an ongoing thing. I think it has great potential, and I think you'll find perhaps a lot of villages would be very interested in exploring that. That's it.
So technically, our process for agenda items is to have a quick thumbs up, thumbs down if a majority of the board would prefer to put this on a future agenda. So I'd like to do that with these topics. So first one is process for board financial oversight. Can I get a quick thumbs up or thumbs down as to who would like to pursue that on a future agenda?
I'm the only one.
I mean, I think, yeah, just certainly talk about the board's responsibility.
Jess is like, no. All right, I think thumbs up, have it. So that one's a check. And then the next one is a discussion around board reserves and making, having a longer term conversation about opportunities for anything over the 20% at a future board meeting. Can I have a thumbs up or thumbs down on that one?
I don't want to go, I don't want to amend the management contract.
No,
Another time.
it's not a minute, begin.
This is not talking, I think this is what happens with the additional
Oh, okay.
over the 20%.
Right.
All right, thumbs up, thumbs down. We got 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I'm kind of.
No.
All right. I think that we're close enough. I think we're at least at 5. So, okay, yeah, that's a thumbs up. So that one is going on.
Janet, can you kind of explain that a little bit? Because anything like that would require renegotiating the management contract.
No. So the 20% is in place.
Yes.
What we do with what they return to CA.
That's the
Oh,
discussion.
that's
Is the
what you want to talk
discussion.
about. You want the return, okay.
Yeah, so
But
not discussing the percentage,
okay.
but discussing
We're not talking actually about the villages in a sense. We're talking about what CA.
what CA will plan
That's
to
a
do
different
with that
topic,
cash.
okay.
Right.
All right.
All right, thank
Instead of it
you.
just being for this year.
That makes more sense.
All right.
I don't know what the vote was then if.
It passed. It
okay.
goes on the list. So I realized that I forgot to announce closed meetings, so I'm going to do that now. If I can find them, that is. Where did they go? Bear with me one moment, please. Okay, so we had a number of closed meetings. We had one of the Audit Committee on June 28th to discuss financial statements. Do I have to announce the vote?
Yeah, you have
Okay.
to announce who was there, and
Vote to close.
the vote to close, and then,
I have to read off all the names of who was there.
Yeah,
yeah, you could just say first names. I mean, it doesn't,
Jim, Dick, Renee, Andy, and Tim. Vote to close was 5-0-0,
and all.
and it was closed.
Yeah.
Sorry. To review several internal audit reports.
Okay, you have to also give the time it was closed and the time it was open. That should be at the top of the second page. there.
So it closed at 7:23 and it reopened at 9:24.
Right, and also the purpose.
I just did that to review several internal audit
Okay,
documents.
we also have to read which of the HOA sections. If it
Oh,
just-
sorry, okay. Under discussion of matters pertaining to employees and personnel, and under consultation with staff, personnel, consultants, attorneys, board members, or other persons in connection with pending or potential litigation and legal matters.
Yeah, unfortunately, you have to read all of that into the record.
Oh, gotcha, okay.
That's good. You did it good.
So, next up, meeting date, July 12th. Closed meeting start time at 1:03 PM, end time at 1:44 PM. This included Kristen, Deb, Susan, and Ed. Vote to close was 4-0-0. And the reason to close was discussion of new and ongoing covenant cases, HOA Section 11B-1, 11-4, consultation with staff, personnel, consultants, attorneys, and other persons in connection with pending or potential litigation. Okay, July 15th. We had Dick, Lakey, Renee, Jess, Lynn, me, Tina, Alan, Andy, Ginny, Sherry, and Dennis Matty. Votes to close, 10-4, 0 against, 0 abstain. Meeting closed at 9 PM, reopened at 10:28 PM. And it was discussion of matters pertaining to employees and personnel and consultation with staff, personnel, consultants, attorneys, board members, or persons in connection with pending or potential litigation or other legal matters. All right, two more. Oh, no, just one more. July 20th, Audit Committee, CA Headquarters, Jim, Renee, Dick. Tim and Andy. Vote to close, 5-0-0. This was closed under discussion of matters pertaining to employees and personnel and consultation with staff, personnel, consultants, attorneys, board members, or other persons in connection with pending or potential litigation or other legal matters. Closed at 7:40 PM and reopened at 9:20 PM. Thank you for bearing with me on that one. And that is all the closed meetings.
I move we adjourn.
Yeah, I'm totally in favor of that. Do I have a second?
second.
Thank you. We adjourn at 9:57. Thank you all.